We have parking ratios, alternative building materials, building height, and light pole height. So here is a view of the Phase 2 proposed improvements. So north is to the left, and the north edge has that vacant infill land and a main east-west access to Harlem, redemising of the space in the middle of the building, and then the facade improvements to the south. The square footage, the infill will have 3 small spaces. Then to the south of that, there will be some mid-sized spaces and an anchor tenant and a junior anchor tenant. The 71,000 square foot space to the south is the facade-only improvements. The site has this signage, stop bars, directional pavement, pedestrian features. One notable pedestrian feature is they're proposing the 6-foot sidewalk along Harlem, and that will be within the property line. There's a slight jog, but it otherwise is in good alignment with the sidewalk, continuing from Phase 1. There are planters that are proposed within these pedestrian hardscaped areas, and there's no changes proposed to the planters that would be in front of that southern facade-only improvements area. The south outlet building, you see at your lower right, that is just to have the parking and the walkway adjusted, so no changes to the facade there. As far as access, to note on the 2 major points to Harlem, you see them noted with the arrows. Those will remain, but there's a west cross access existing at the bottom of the north access aisle. So that will be removed, and the south drive aisle will just slightly be aligned with its intersecting north-south drive aisle. The edges of the drive aisle that's close and parallel to the inline building will be slightly realigned, and there will be a continuous row of 90-degree parking alongside the building, similar to Phase 1. The walkway is also proposed to be straightened and continuous, and the drive aisle width proposed to be about 30 and a half to 31 feet. The westerly aisle near Harlem is proposed as a 2-way aisle. As far as parking, the major 549 stall field is proposed to have 2-way 24-foot wide drive aisles. Stall orientation will change from angled to the 90-degree, and then thus affecting the curbs and end islands accordingly. Phase 1 also had this type of configuration. Trash enclosures provided in the rear of the building. The petitioner confirmed turning movements will work for garbage vehicles, and the petitioner lastly also confirmed that no cart corrals are required for any of the future tenants. Here's a snapshot of what the conceptual west outlot building with the drive-through would look like. So this is, just as I said, conceptual. There's no final design proposed. There's no use-specific tenant details. There's increased landscaping that surrounds the drive-through with a pedestrian connection to Harlem's sidewalk. Accessible parking is shown. When the final design comes, Plan Commission approval will be required along with a traffic study. Landscaping is, as staff notes, well-designed and improves the existing conditions. There's some waivers needed for percentage of site, buffer yards, foundational, parking lot landscaping, and island width. Offsetting improvements that were provided include upsizing to 4-inch caliper on trees and providing some dense shrubbery at the far northwest and southwest corners of the site along Harlem. Perimeter landscaping has a continuous row of hedge maple and flowering pear trees in the right-of-way on Harlem. At the south outlet, the recessed plantings will be replaced by 4 small round planters. Here's a snapshot with the conceptual. You'll see that there are several 2-foot-high evergreen shrubs proposed to the west between the outlot and Harlem. Here's an image of some of the previous approval renderings and elevation for Phase 1. So you can see they had contemporary materials with a unique focus design on anchor tenants. Here's the proposed rendering. So the staff notes it appears complementary to Phase 1. Elevations, so the scope, as I mentioned, starts from north to south with infill spaces. These have 2 colors of coping, combination of Chiha panels and ephes, 2 different awning styles similar to Phase 1. The main anchor has a large canopy with large columnar elements, and this is all framed by a stacked assembly of fiber cement panels with a blue band and another blue band down on the column elements. The rest is largely brick. South of the main anchor, those spaces have brown panels, brick, more storefront glazing. The junior anchor has an entry with off-white ephes and a blue panel for signage with an awning below. The far south part of the development utilizes the consistent materials with the rest of the design and has these interesting vertical accents that help break up the horizontal expanse. So here's the material palette. The focus is on the front, which has a 45% brick and a combination of masonry, phenolic panels, ephes, and metal. The south side of the building does have a short portion of this wrapped with some of those materials. Signage. There's existing ground sign at the south access aisle. It's going to be relocated slightly to be able to accommodate for that sidewalk. The Walt sign and structure will be removed. The junior anchor tenant wall sign was noted with a blue panel in the drawings. That will need to meet the requirements along with any other signage. The PUD allows for 1.5 square foot per linear foot of 1.5 square foot per linear foot. There's no directional signage proposed. And then parking. So we provided an analysis of the different ratios. Phase 1 had a ratio of 4.7 per 1,000 square feet of building area. Phase 2 provides more building area and goes up from 617 to 650 spaces. That makes a ratio of 4.9. Thus, together, the whole plaza will be 4.8. The outlot design would involve a loss of 59 spaces from those 650. That ratio would then become 4.5, which the petitioner has stated is comfortable with meeting the needs. The code requires 6.5 ratio. Meeting that code would mean needing 868 stalls in Phase 2 or 897 with the outlot. Trends today tend to lean towards less car-dependent shopping patterns. Our code does date back to the 1980s and 90s. This is a design that has flexibility for shared parking and a range of peak hours. The petitioner states also that today's large national retailers generally know how much parking is needed. And lastly, regarding accessibility, the petitioner has confirmed that state code requirements will be met. Lastly, lighting. Fixtures were provided. Site lighting is 40 feet tall, same as Phase 1. There's cylinder sconces proposed at the infill tenant spaces with 2 half-sphere sconces at the major anchor tenant. There are also recessed canopy lights and wall packs referenced. The property line foot candles are met. The sconces that I mentioned do have a rating that includes U3 for uplighting. So fixture cut sheets will need to be provided showing the no uplighting with updated photometric for review in the permitting phase. That concludes staff presentation. I have the standards up on screen and petitioner here.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Does the applicant have anything to add? at this time?
No.
No? Okay. I will go to the commissioners, and your team may be called up just for questioning. Commissioner Sepisi, any questions?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Merrick?
I don't really have questions, but I'm glad of the redo on the sidewalks out there. And I'd love to see even fewer parking spaces, I think, right? You know, we got lots of parking and not a lot of cars in them, in lots of places around the village. So, but I think that's a bigger picture for the village to look at, right, about our code, so.
Fair enough, good comments. Commissioner Truxell?
No, no concerns whatsoever, but I do commend the staff on the report. It's very thorough, so it's easy to understand, and as I said, no concerns with what I've seen so far. So
Sure.
nice job.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Yep, I agree with the statements, and I'm trying to remember, is there a sidewalk there now along Harlem?
Phase 2, no.
Right, so this would be a nice improvement there for that.
And that's they did it for phase 1 as well, and they did phase 1, and this was a big gap that we had in our sidewalk, and to one of our biggest shopping centers, so it's a good improvement to have.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, is that it, Commissioner
That's
Hamilton?
all my comments now.
I have a few comments. Something, I think, you know, the materials and design, the color palette, that looks good. What you guys have built out there looks nice. I know it's the same palette, so I have no problem with the facade. The parking going from 26 width to 24, like in phase 1, no problem. Same with the lighting, 40 feet versus the 25, phase 1. We approved that. The landscaping looks fine, the dense shrubbery at the kind of the big corners, the northwest and southwest, the thicker trees. I'm good with that. I do have some questions, though, so you will have to come up, and I do have some questions regarding, like, tenant occupancy. So you know who's gonna come in. And from the staff report, it's communicated that there's no shopping carts. But what if a tenant leaves and a potential new tenant needs shopping carts? Are we limiting the pool of who could operate in that structure? Yeah, if you can come up and just, I'll swear you in, just state your name.
It's different features than phase 1.
Oh, and that's a question too. Are you guys also tied to phase 1 or no? I
Yes.
mean, Yeah,
Yes.
that's what my understanding.
Potentially a grocery store was gonna move in there and potentially is gonna get anchored by somebody else in that spot over there.
But
Maybe
that's another question too, but one at a time, Commissioner Merrick, but I do appreciate the comments. If you could just state your name, sir, and then I'll swear you in.
Yep, Andrew Balzer, Director of Redevelopment for Brixmore Property Group.
Okay, Andrew, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
So the question about cart corrals, would that, like inhibit any future leasing activity?
Yeah.
It's not going to, we wouldn't tell anybody that they couldn't come because of that. If it was something that was necessary, we'd probably come back, and if there's some kind of a variance or whatever's needed to be adjusted, we would address it.
Okay, so that makes sense. You can, in real time, you add one or two, you come back here,
Yeah,
and you adjust the parking lot.
not a problem.
Right, okay, so you may lose a spot or two, but I do concur with Commissioner Merrick on that. A lot of times you see these parking lots and it's a sea of asphalt, right? So if you're comfortable with that ratio, I have no problem with the ratio. I know the parking issue, the parking ratios are more of an art than a science, and it does evolve. Shopper habits are different now than they were in the 80s and 90s. But going to Commissioner Merrick's point, and I kind of agree, like, the Amazon grocer, there was all this time spent, they were kind of the fundamental, the anchor store there. Technically, they're occupied, but they're not open. And I know you can't predict the future. You have a good tenant, they decide to change something, but now you're stuck with a building that's unoccupied. And I understand there's economic forces beyond any of our controls. So I don't hold that against anybody. But as just a general rule, I think it's bad to have unused occupancy of any new building, let alone, existing buildings, like even the outlot, I normally wouldn't have an issue with it, but right across the street, there was an outlot building, that was an Applebee's, shut down, then it was a Dugout Restaurant, shut down, then a Bandana, shut down, and now it's an Ascend. So, I understand that's just a kind of a future thing, but I know my own feeling and philosophy would be, I would wait until you see that fill up before you're able to assess that. But in terms of the Amazon, is there any sort of, I guess, update on that? And then what can be avoided in this new phase two? Because it would not be a good look to have another nice new room or building that's not occupied, or it's occupied but it's not open. Can you at least, speak to that to somewhat?
Sure. So the grocer was obviously the catalyst, right? That
Yeah.
helped us kind of kick things off, and it allowed us to be able to improve that whole side of the center. And it was really unforeseen, that they didn't open. We're being told that they are opening next year. Don't know when. I think we're all getting the same updates at the same time. Regarding phase two, we do have an anchor and a junior anchor that's coming along with this, which is our catalyst to finish this project off. But there will be spec space, but it'll be improved spec space. So that's really where we're trying to get to, where we can put the improvements into the center to attract somebody to come in. So there will be unoccupied space, including the 3 new small shops that will connect the grocer with phase two. We weren't going to add additional speculative space just because of how much there is. But in conversations with staff, and I think desire from other members, we worked out to where we can go ahead and build it now, even though it's gonna be on spec. It'll be vacant for a little bit longer, but it's there. And, we feel like that's the right approach to be able to have a fully improved center with the entire environment, looking like a Class A shopping center.
I concur with the logic behind that. Like, you don't want to have it like dental work, one facade here, one facade. So it seems seemingly an all or nothing proposition, and you want to make it attractive to get those new, those tenants. And I don't know, I mean, it's a perfect corridor, and I like what phase one has brought. I wish, the grocer was open, but I just wanted to ask about that, because anytime we can get, if we have new buildings that are, decked out, we do want to have them occupied.
Yeah, if I might add, when we take a look, especially for the anchor tenants,
Yeah,
we're very, very sensitive to the credit, to the longevity. I mean, we're making a significant investment. We made a significant investment in the grocer.
Yeah.
So we're very careful with who we make those investments with. Really unusual situation. So I wouldn't see it being something that, I don't want to try to predict, but I can't imagine something like that, happening like that.
and like I said, you can't predict some of these things.
Right.
So you go on past information, but everything's fluid, the future and economic issues. So hopefully they will open up in a year. That would be nice. It would be a nice addition and really fill that out. So I don't have any other comments for you. Andrew, does anybody else from the commission?
Maybe I'll say, so to finish my earlier thought, which I did out of turn, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Is that if you do get a grocer in there, you're gonna have those carts on the other side of that parking lot, right? And that'll still be a draw, and I do like the fact that the outbuilding, though not being pushed through here, is drive-through, right? Because it's pretty clear that that's been the trend, right? That outlots are used for people to do, to run drive-throughs through, and they're busy, right, around the village. They attract lots of
That's true.
customers, right? So it looks like a good setup if you could get the grocer in there, right? That everything's in the right place.
Right. I concur. And that, and if you go a little bit further north, that one corner is hopping to, almost to its own detriment. So like this would be something that opens it up, so. But again, those are future predictions and whatnot. But I have no other questions or comments, Andrew, so if you don't have anything to say, you can sit down and,
Well, no, only just to compliment staff. I mean, staff has been incredible to work with, and, you know, we've been working with staff for many years on this project, and it's nice to see this come to fruition, and, you know, a very detailed report and fantastic staff to work with. So,
okay,
thank
we
you.
appreciate your time, Andrew. At this time, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public wishing to speak. Seeing none, could I get a motion to close the public hearing on item 2?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Truxell, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Or you mentioned the standards, see the staff report, so I'll just move on to the motions.
Okay.
So at this time, may I have a motion number 1 regarding the special use for substantial deviation?
All right. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant a special use permit to the petitioner Andrew Balzar of Brixmore Property Group on behalf of Central IA Tinley Park Plaza LLC for a special use for a substantial deviation for final approval with the conceptual plan option for a potential future outlet building with drive-through to the Tinley Park Plaza planned unit development for the property located at 16039 through 16199 Harlem Avenue to redevelop the property identified as Phase 2 in accordance with all plans and documents submitted and listed herein, and adopt the findings of fact as proposed by the August 17, 2023 staff report, subject to the following conditions.
You can state conditions as noted in the staff report.
Conditions as noted in the staff report.
Okay, a motion made by Commissioner Truxell, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hamilton. Lori, can I have a roll call?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. Now may I have a motion number 2 regarding the site plan and architectural approval?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to grant the petitioner Andrew Balzar of Brixmore Property Group on behalf of Central IA Tinley Park Plaza LLC site plan and architectural approval to redevelop the property identified as Phase 2 for the property located at 16039 through 16199 Harlem Avenue in the B2 PD Community Shopping Tinley Park Plaza PUD zoning district in accordance with the plans submitted, and adopt findings of fact as proposed in the August 17th, 2023 staff report, subject to the conditions as noted in the staff report.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Sure. Second.
A motion made by Commissioner Hamilton, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi. Lori, can I have a roll call?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. So this item will go to the village board September 5th. So, Mr. Balzar, you get with staff on how to attend, but good luck, and we appreciate your time, and you can leave now, if you so would desire.
But you don't have to.
Okay, we will move on to item 3 for tonight's meeting. Item 3 is a public hearing to consider recommending that the village board grant Leonard McHenry on behalf of Gas and Wash a special use for an automobile service station and an automobile car wash and variations, urban design overlay, parking minimum, parking locations, wall/ground signs, etc., to permit a gas station with a convenience store, car wash, and 2 drive-through restaurant uses at the property located at 18301 LaGrange Road, at the southeast LaGrange Road and at the southeast corner of LaGrange Road and 183rd Street in the B3 General Business and Commercial Zoning District. Site plan and final plat approval are also considered at the meeting. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Sure. So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Truxell. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hamilton. All those in favor of opening the public hearing for item 3, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. I have received certification that the public hearing notice was published in the local newspaper. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in after staff's presentation. So staff, please proceed.
Thanks, Chairman Gray. Just as kind of an overview, this went to a workshop on June 1st Plan Commission, so that was a while ago. The kind of, I'll walk through kind of what the project is overall here, but the main concern here has kind of been traffic circulation. So that's what's taken this time, is the petitioner really kind of went back to the drawing board, took another look at it, looked at the site to see how do they make this work the best. They worked with our engineering team, met with the county, got some more of their feedback to go into this. So we've kind of worked here, and I think initially we thought, hey, maybe we'll see a few changes. I think they've taken some pretty significant steps here with the overall site, as well as kind of the roadway access circulation here to help make this work. So it has been a couple months, but they've been working at it for a couple months here. And I think we finally got to something that works out a little better here. So as part of the request for this, there's special use permits, there's the gas station, and that's always requested just as gas stations are unique. You don't kind of want them just going in anywhere, mostly because of this traffic that's coming in and out of the site. As well as a car wash is a separate special use as well. Variations, we'll kind of walk through a couple of those, but a lot of it has to do with the urban design overlay district, which is really nice in principle sometimes when you think about it, increases walkability and things like that. It's really, really tough to put the requirements they put in there for new construction when the primary purpose of what you're building is for automobiles. So there is still some walkability in there. There's walkways, there's things like that that we've built in. But there are some variances there just since it is an auto-oriented use, and then it's just kind of within the context of LaGrange Road and the uses that are out there. But we've kind of tried to meet the intent where we can. There's parking variances and then signage variances as well. A lot of those are very much kind of what we saw in the 183rd Street location, which is open, and I think most people have gone to. So this is going to be very similar to the 183rd Street near Harlem Avenue location. The one kind of major difference here is going to be that there's 2 drive-throughs at this location. So that does add a little bit of a site circulation thought process that we've had to go through on this. And then there's final plat approval, final plat of subdivision approval, and then site plan and architectural approval. Location and zoning, the southwest corner of 183rd Street in LaGrange. This is mostly just surrounded by B3. It's got unincorporated Cook County land to the west, the Orland Park mixed-use campus zoning to the west as well. And then to the east is kind of where the new Marriott hotels will be, as well as then hotels and restaurants to the south. There will be one lot with the subdivision that will be between this gas and wash and then the existing Cajun crab restaurant that's down there in the hotels. So there is one parcel that's being carved out here that will remain zone B3 and vacant for the time being. And that will be owned separately from the developer here. Then there's hospitals, residences are more to the east of this, and there's a little bit of a buffer there of some office ORI zoning. And then a lot of kind of, not hospitals, but medical office buildings, advocates out there, the new Loyola locations just to the north on 179th Street. You can see that here with the B3, I-80 obviously to the south of where those hotels and restaurants are. Here's the overall site plan on the site, so the kind of new updated location here that was in the packet as well. So kind of a redesigned site here to have different locations of where the drive-throughs will enter, as well as the kind of biggest change, as you can see up on White Eagle Drive, that's gonna be the primary entrance and exit to this site. And they pushed that kind of further south, further away from the intersection. That'll allow more stacking, it'll allow less conflicts to happen. When it was closer to the intersection, there was gonna be some, you'd basically have to wait to have somebody let you make a left out of this site. Well, I think people can work together, we try and make it as easy as possible to have people kind of stack at the end of the line. The relocation of the trucks kind of separately from the rest of the location as well, helps circulate the trucks to the end of the line as well, kind of further south there. So overall, that was the biggest change. Going forward for that access, you can see here they've kind of worked on the sidewalk and the walkway access to the site as well. There's not a great sidewalk system in this area, but like everything else, we say you gotta start somewhere, and when we're working on these sites, we wanna have it connect as well as possible. There isn't gonna be a sidewalk on LaGrange Road, and talking with our engineering staff, there is really no plans, and as you go south here, you'd run into I-80. Not that it's impossible, but there'd be some pretty substantial engineering and costs there, so. You can look at Orland and say, well, it's possible. It's gonna have to be a project in and of itself if that ever happens. But they have proposed the sidewalk here on White Eagle, and we'll talk a little bit about the sidewalk on 183rd Street as well. The goal here is really to connect this to the existing hotels, existing restaurants, and then the new Marriott hotels as well, which are on the east side of White Eagle Drive here. And here you can kind of see the walkway circulation system, the public sidewalk, as well as in the green is kind of the private circulation sidewalk that's there that would connect in with that. Vehicle circulation here, you can kind of see where different vehicles can circulate through the two drive-throughs, as well as how they'd access the car wash. So kind of the dark blue there is kind of entering the site and then deciding if you want to go to one of the two drive-throughs. They have yet to have, I think, finalized what those tenants will be, and they will have to make sure that whatever they propose aligns with the traffic report here in terms of stacking, overall traffic. Just with the amount of uses, with the car wash, with the two drive-throughs, directional signage is a part of this. So we live in Chicago, so striping only does so much, particularly in the winter. So it is driven a little bit by directional signage to make sure you're entering the right drive-through, going to the right location. But I think we've worked those locations out to make sure that they're at the right locations. They're not just placed everywhere around the site. They're made at those locations where you're making a decision on where to go. So, and that, or reaffirming that decision if you're driving. Here's kind of the parking. So there is a parking variance here, kind of similar to everything else we've said. Parking is an art, not a science, and our code is from 1978, so not even the 80s and 90s. So quite honestly, we kind of look more at other locations, look towards developers who really kind of know their trends. We don't want to overpark the sites. I would bring a text amendment before you guys, but I really think what we're doing with the overall kind of comprehensive plan will then play into different code changes. So an aside there, because I think it affects all the projects we're going to be talking about here, is why we haven't brought a text amendment, is that I think that stems really well to do out of a comprehensive plan. But they do have the parking here, and they've supplied some numbers as well as what they have on other sites. It's very comparable to the two locations we have here as well, to just kind of show where there's parking there for their different uses. Going back to the sidewalk, I will say the plans did not have a sidewalk along 183rd Street. There has been a proposal to bring that sidewalk down so it would connect in with that private green sidewalk that runs out to 183rd Street. So there was a condition, staff has recommended to connect that sidewalk down 183rd Street. That can be done in the right-of-way if that's possible, and if not, if it's on private land, that can be done within an easement, kind of similar to the last project. You can run a public sidewalk and just place that in easement. So a couple options there, just to work out with engineering. During the kind of workshop, we talked about kind of car wash stacking, drive-through stacking. There wasn't too many concerns there, other than I'll say this is conditioned and approved based upon the traffic report that they've supplied. So anything's gonna have to meet that traffic report and what they're proposing there. If they came in with the McDonald's on this site, I think most of us would know that's not gonna work. And so we do have the ability here if something comes in to ask for what their numbers, what their traffic's gonna be and make sure it works. It's to their advantage too. They're not gonna want a site that people don't wanna visit. So, while that sounds great, they're gonna make sure it works as well, but we have some safety to back that up as well. Overall landscaping, there wasn't too many concerns. It's a pretty well landscaped site here. And I think you can say from the other two sites, it's probably the best well-maintained gas station, but probably out of all the commercial properties, I'll say they do a really good job with it. So they proposed it here. It's a little, our landscape code's a lot like our parking code in that it sometimes overreaches, and particularly, again, on an auto-oriented site, you can't just be placing trees under gas station canopies, which is kind of what it's pushing for. So I think they've done a really good job kind of maximizing what they can do here. If you look at that kind of along LaGrange and along 183rd Street, they've got quite a bit of landscaping here, trees that really help beautify the area. So again, if you've seen the 183rd Street location, it'll be very kind of similar to what they've done there. Architecture, it's gonna look just like the other gas and wash locations, but I think they do a pretty good job here. They use kind of a stacked stone look around the base, and then use brick on all four sides, kind of tie in the canopy into that then. So it does meet kind of their prototype, but I think they've done a higher end prototype here than what you get for most gas stations. So it'll look just like the one on, or very close to the one on 183rd Street, and probably most of the other ones in the area. Same with the car wash building, kind of comparable brick and stone there that ties in along with even the gas station canopies. They use kind of the stone columns with those as well. Signage is the one thing that has, talking with the petitioner and at the workshop, they said they were open to kind of tweaking what that signage was, and some of the ones that were kind of minor requests, removing those, seeing what they could do to kind of fit within the code a little better. It is a very unique site in the fact that it basically functions almost like a multi-tenant shopping center, but yet it's one building with kind of multiple tenants in it. So it is a fairly unique use that they use here. Now we've kind of worked through this 2 other times too, with the one on Harlem that was existing, annexed in. There was a lot of discussion there about signage, as well as on the 183rd Street one. This one is going to be essentially the same thing that happened at 183rd Street. So in terms of the signage that they'll be asking for, the variances, they've been reduced as much as possible, but there is some uniqueness here. And then the directional signs are there's a few more of those, and they're a little bigger, just because they do have 2 drive-throughs here. They do have the car wash, and you want to make sure you're, again, reaffirming people's decisions when they're on the site. So that way they know they're headed in the right drive-through, and they can go get coffee instead of tacos or whatever. They'll know they're headed in the right direction. So that, if you look in the staff report, there was kind of the list of the different variations here, and they've reduced a majority of those. There's still a few existing, including some of the height and sizes of, like, the signage on the canopy, as well as then the ground sign, LED maximum size, that's supposed to be 20%. That's something I think we've run into for variances a few times, is if you meet that and you're driving on LaGrange Road, you almost can't get a full message across if people are, if they're driving you the speed limit, you probably can't get the message across, but there's higher speeds than 45 on LaGrange right here coming off the expressway. So it's a little bit bigger, but they've still kept those signs looking good and kind of still keep that base and the frame tying into the overall site here. So there is a number of variations here, but again, some of them are just kind of ones that reoccur, the signage, the parking, trash enclosure locations. That one's also unique in that we don't normally allow them in front yards. However, they have 3 front yards here, so it's kind of tough to avoid. And then those urban design overlay ones that we talked about. Again, with 3 front yards, it was pretty tough to meet those, but we did work on the walkability of the site. So that's what I have for that. Again, for the traffic side, we have Dana West here from Robinson Engineering. She worked pretty close with the petitioner, as well as Colby, who's our Assistant Public Works Director and Village Engineer, working with their staff to really make sure the circulation works. And talking with the county, looking at the traffic, there's in all likelihood going to need to be a signal eventually at White Eagle and 183rd Street. The tough part about this is if it's kind of a chicken or an egg thing, because the county, IDOT, the village, nobody's going to pay for a signal there unless there's a development. A development's not going to wait the 2 years it could take to get IDOT approval and everything else. So there could be some stacking on White Eagle that happens there. If you're making a left out onto 183rd and LaGrange, it may take a little bit more than what people are used to. Ultimately, anything that developed here would run into that issue, so that's kind of where, and that's likely why it's been vacant this whole time. It's a tough location, and White Eagle is really close to LaGrange Road. If this was a new development site, that road wouldn't be there, but White Eagle used to be the old LaGrange Road before they kind of realigned it. So that's why that road exists there. And again, just really close to LaGrange. It's kind of the best situation we could come up with here. The grading is also, we brought that up at the workshop, is pretty significant here. You got about an 18-foot grade difference from corner to corner on this. From the low to the high spot. So again, even access, when you're looking at that, came into play to say, how do you get the cars in here without having ramp, essentially a ramp as the exit. They do plan on still looking at possibilities for a right-in or a right-out on 183rd Street. Again, discussions with the county seemed like it was unlikely. Potentially a right-in could work there, a right-out seemed less likely. So that was their basis. This is very similar to kind of what Loyola had done with their LaGrange access at that location, which is that they're comfortable moving forward with the plan that's in front of you. If for some reason they get an approval from them and they have to make an adjustment with this, they'd have to come back if it was any significant change to the overall site here, or parking or anything like that. So. But they're comfortable with what's in front of us here today, and then they'll just kind of see, is there something they could get through the county, like a write-in? That's actually a preference of the village as well. If you could, any little bit of traffic you could pull off of White Eagle helps make that access a little better, whether it's an in or an out somewhere else. Obviously, the toughest part about this is anybody that developed here wouldn't be able to get access on LaGrange Road. Just with the width of that road, how close it is to the expressway exit, there's no chance for an access there, and that's really where most of your traffic's coming from. So, again, it's not perfect, but I think it is the best in kind of a really tough site as it is here. And then we've conditioned the approval just to be subject to those Cook County approvals. They'll have to put a light in or a signal and work with the county and the village to do that if it's needed. And if there's any traffic issues out here in the meantime, that'll have to be addressed as well. So that's, if you have any specific question, so like I said, Dana's here. She can help with if you have stormwater or access and traffic questions. So that's all I have.
Okay.
But back to you guys.
Thank you, Dan, for a thorough presentation there. Does the applicant have anything to add?
The applicant has nothing further to add to Dan's presentation.
Okay.
But we are available for questions, obviously.
Okay, Mr. McHenry, if there is, if there's any questioning, I'll ask you and swear you in. So, with that said, we'll start with Commissioner Merrick.
So I have three things that I'm interested in. One, I'm super happy about moving the sidewalk to the White Eagle space over there, and I'm thinking about two other things, right? One is, so I may have been the one who talked about a path on LaGrange, but, and I understand the one right there doesn't make any sense, but I was really thinking about across the street on the other side of 183rd and LaGrange, still on the same side of LaGrange as this development, which has nothing to do with this, but the bigger plan. And so, and I know that would cost a lot of money, and that's in the future and all those things. But one of the questions I have about that sidewalk over there on White Eagle is, how do people get to the other side of 183rd? Potentially when there's a light there, and pre-planning that piece, which that may be out of the scope of things here, but something that I want people to keep in mind in thinking about connections to those things, and connecting up to the path that starts maybe a mile down, right, that goes along LaGrange, that is super awesome for biking, running, walking, and all that stuff. I have one other piece, which is the actual walking paths that are inside the property itself. It's hard to tell on here, and as we get to more and more of these places that have drive-throughs, and then if you park and you want to go in to a place, the ways in which to get across these things where cars are coming through and all that sort of stuff, it's hard to tell from these renderings about what the visibility is like when you're coming up to people who are going through the drive-through, going from window to window or whatever they're doing, and then you parked your car someplace and you're walking over, and they got to be seeing you, you have to be able to see them, and I have a hard time fully understanding that piece there, though I'm sure you've taken it into consideration, so.
Okay, those are good comments. Do you necessarily need a response on any of those?
I'm interested in a response to the second one, for real, right? Because that
Yeah.
is within the design of the place.
100, yeah.
And I suspect, Dan, you could probably answer that because you worked through that, or other members of the team can, but.
You're talking about like visibility sightlines from the sidewalks?
I'm talking
No.
about the actual walkways that we have here, and, you know, when,
Like the functionality of it, like, so I'm driving through that drive-through, there's a tree there, because this doesn't show the trees, somebody's parked here, so is there like a 3D rendering or something where you could see if there's blind spots, or I know some past developments, we would have like, at least striped or warnings or something
Yeah.
to alert pedestrians as well as drivers, so that there's not a,
we
Yeah,
made
there's
sure that
stri-
there was particular clearance, for example, at the Dunkin' on 171st and, remind me, on 80th
yeah,
Ave, right?
yeah.
Because there's all the shrubs that come around, and when you're in the car and you're coming around and somebody's walking across there, you want to be able to see the pedestrian who's
Right.
walking to go into the doorway. And the sightlines aren't necessarily that good from the staff.
And if you have like say a 4-foot bush, you're not maybe necessarily gonna see a 3-foot or 3.5-foot kid or 4-foot kid, but if it's a smaller, I think the Dunkin' Donuts had smaller
Yeah.
shrubs so that no matter what, yeah, it helps enhance, but it doesn't obscure. And that's a good point, like, I know you have this, but I too cannot visualize that working together, like how it actually would function. I'm sure that looks nice, but will it function safely, I think is the
We can
idea.
Yeah, and I don't have like a guaranteed answer for you. We'll make sure we take a look, see if there's anything that conflicts with visibility on it that would have to adjust. I don't think there's anything immediate. A lot of the landscaping and part of the landscaping review was to make sure that it's the right type of plantings that go in there. Cause there are some shopping center, even over by like Target and stuff, sometimes some of those just get too high and where you have people crossing and you're trying to drive around, you can't really see. So that has been part of the landscape review, but we can take a deeper dive and look into it. Ultimately, it is a tight site. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like a downtown too, is like, you're trying to jam a lot into it, and at the end of the day, we want crosswalks. Pedestrians still need to be a little bit careful.
I agree. Yeah.
And if there's any ways we can maybe help slow down cars where we do have those, that's good. So I'll just say we'll take a bigger look at
Right,
that one.
and just to echo, because this was in the staff report too, and I highlighted it on page 3 of the staff report, that, you know, it says, in general, roadways in this area create an uncomfortable, unsafe, and treacherous environment. And I mean, I know LaGrange there's no sidewalk on LaGrange, there's no pedestrian being kind of moved that way, although if you do have a corner light, I agree with Commissioner Merrick having some foresight, have something across the way and something that connects further down 183rd. That may not be, you know, salient right now, but I think future planning, I think it is. But it says fatality 85% of the time. So when I look through this, that was kind of the criteria is, I think there was language in here that it was believed that was designed to keep safe. I did like your presentation here where it showed the sidewalks and also the movement of the traffic. I think you guys have channelized it, so it should function in a way that's not, you know, treacherous, uncomfortable, and unsafe. But, you know, going back to Commissioner Merrick's comments, we just want to make sure that that extra look is given so that we ensure that, right? We want, and I'm sure the petitioner wants it run as safe as well, because you're going to have a lot of traffic coming in there. And I generally like the flow of the traffic in off of White Eagle. I think that looks pretty good. I do have one question, Dana, you probably can answer this. I see that, like, and I'm glad they put this up, so that one of the drive-throughs goes further west before it goes east, rather than coming in east to go west. And was that for stacking purposes? I just was curious. So the orange line, you know, right, the blue, you're coming in west, you turn north. But the orange line, you don't. You go the purple down and then up to go east and then out. I mean,
They may be able to respond a little better.
Sure.
One was to, I know, separate the entrances to different areas, though, to,
Okay.
you know, not have them only a few feet right next. to
right,
each
because you
other.
might, instead of the burritos, you're getting the coffee and you.
Yeah, you can make it
yeah.
a little clearer where the entrances to them are, but then I can also leave it up to them if they had any other reasoning.
I'll swear you in, just state your name and I'll then swear you in.
Christian Kolashevsky.
Okay, Christian, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Specifically in regards to that, there's really two issues writing that. You know, the traffic in the drive-through is very slow-moving, 5 miles per hour. In regards to your previous comments, we do have stop bars at all intersections with the crosswalks. So there's a stop sign and a stop bar on the pavement. So we're very cognizant of that as well. One of the functions of this is in the drive-through, you always want to come up to the drive-through window with your driver's side.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
so we've got to make a counterclockwise move towards the window. And then after the window, then you can go clockwise or whatever. So it was really a function that drove that. And we also wanted to make sure we had enough stacking. So rather than, if you see the orange line as it's coming up to the east on the south side of the building, and then making the left turn, if we had just continued that line horizontal to the main drive, it would not allow us to have enough stacking. So that's why we turned it down and came from there.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for the clarification, Christian. Makes perfect sense. Okay, any other, so that was, yeah, that was you. So any other comments?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sepisi.
Well, first off, I gotta tell you, I drive by this intersection about every day of my life. and to just put a visual in your head of what can be here and probably is going to be here is mind-boggling. I've been in places like this before. I've had to cross that drive-through to get from a parking lot to a door, and sometimes there are just situations where you think you're taking your life in your hand. The slow drive-through traffic, maybe speed bumps, something, I'm pretty positive it can all be solved. I don't doubt that for a minute. The one thing about particular just Jermaine LaGrange Road, if anybody drives down there a lot,
Yeah.
you see a lot of people just walking down LaGrange Road.
That is
They
true.
walk on the curb lanes, they walk in the center lanes, they'll just cut across and that. I don't know that there's ever gonna be a 100% control over that situation. Unless we start writing tickets for jaywalking or whatever they call it now. So, I like this, I think they've covered their bases very well.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Truxell.
I want to thank you guys for making all these updates, because my biggest concern was the traffic in and out on 183rd Street. So seeing that gone right now is good. And what you've done with the circulation within the property is great.
Yeah.
Again, the staff report was so detailed, it was so easy to understand what's going on here, guys. So great job on writing all this up. I don't have any more concerns with this. Well, actually, one question, I guess, is with all the lighting variances, this is kind of butting up against residential areas. Is there any concerns with the amount of lighting going on? Has any residents voiced any concerns with anything?
It doesn't really apply residential, like
It's
there's gonna
adjacent.
be an entire commercial, development that'll be between it.
Isn't it like 183rd and White Eagle, so it'd be northeast? Isn't that a subdivision right over there at 183rd and White Eagle? At the intersection.
Yeah, I mean, it's a while,
Half
it's
mile.
a while away.
Is it?
It's on that other
It's
side
like-
of
so
that
it's just
curve.
down to 183rd
But
twice
they do have photometric plans that keep their light mostly within the site.
Okay.
And with the way LEDs work and stuff now, it is a lot more contained to that site. So if you live there and there's nothing in the development, you're gonna see light, but that light, you shouldn't
I
have
think you get a
glare,
lot of
you
light
shouldn't
from
have any
Loyola
light
too, right?
spillage.
You know, with Loyola going in, so this isn't the first, you know, time that. we're
It's a
gonna
lot
see-
more controlled, everything's gonna be downcast,
Okay.
so like the old gas stations used to all just have like lights on the roof, kinda up, so you'd get that glare from the roadway. Really, the bigger issue could be roadways, if like you had lights that were kinda angled up, or you had the light spilling out onto the roads, but they've actually contained the light to their site, and then since everything's downcast, not that you're not gonna see it lit up in the distance, that's kind of,
Right.
it's lit up, but it shouldn't at all affect any nearby residential.
You know, a lot of variances, but taking consideration the staff's worked pretty hard with the submitter on this, so no further concerns and to go for me.
Okay. Commissioner Hamilton.
Obviously, a lot of hard work went into this, and looks like it's a good plan, given the constraints of the site. I just have one question, kind of curious. I see there's an LP tank pad that is northwest of the convenience store. Is that for sale of LP tanks, or is that actually an LP tank for the function of the convenience store?
That is actually for commercial sale, for refills, just similar like we have at the other sites.
Yeah, just seems to be separated from the main building, which I guess was a little unusual.
We actually do move it away from the building just for that, and we have an attendant come out. The people themselves don't fill their tanks, but attendant comes out and will fill the tank.
It's because it's also larger than most gas stations, you just do a tank exchange, they'll actually fill it, so they have an even larger tank out there usually, so it's I think our fire department likes it being a little further away, from the building for that reason.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments. I do have just a few comments. First off, I think the site is a perfect fit for a gas station. And I say this literally 2 weeks ago, I was doing an environmental investigation in Joliet, forgot to gas up there on I-80, ding, my light goes off, and traffic was backed up on I-80, so I exited LaGrange going north, and I was sweating. I was sweating, and went past Loyola on that. I had to get all the way to, I actually went to the gas station by Andrew High School there instead of going to 167th. But I think the location is a really good fit for an area that could serve the community well, especially with Loyola there. So I do think it's a good location. It does have its challenges, as staff has mentioned today, as well as detailed in the report. I'm satisfied is the stacking, the way you have the traffic going, the stacking does look sufficient to what Dan's point. As long as there's not like a Mickey D's there, you're probably okay. I do think that the interior movement within looks superior than what we saw a month or so back. So as Commissioner Hamilton said, there was a lot of hard work going into that. So I appreciate that. I don't have an issue with the sign variations because I agree with staff, what Dan mentioned. It is like kind of a unique multi-tenant complex. And so for just clarity to get you from the right point A to the right point B, I think that's necessary. Although he put up this, I mean, I wish gas prices were $2 and some change. But with that said, unless you're having a fire sale, as staff mentioned, there are some challenges. It's the chicken and egg. Dan was pretty transparent with that, with the county, in terms of having a traffic signal. I can't remember if somebody from staff lives out by there and said that light gives them issues already. If somebody with the commission, the last time we talked about this, but it was detailed in the report that there is some issues now and there will be some more until they get probably a light. And, but it's not gonna stop progress, I understand that. And Dan mentioned also that if Cook County grants you a curb cut on 183rd, there will be some tweaking and you probably will be pumping the brakes to come back here again. And I understand that if that's what you guys want to do, that's fine. I do like the design as it is right now, but I understand if you want to further augment that. So there's no issues there. So, yeah, I think it's a unique spot with some unique challenges, but I do think if you build it, they will come, because I would have came 2 weeks ago, for sure. So, any other comments from our commission?
I have one.
Sure.
So I thought Commissioner Truxell would bring this up, and we didn't talk about parking things and the gambling inside today.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which we had a follow-up from last time. I don't know enough about, I'm in favor of less parking. But there was some discussion last time about, oftentimes, the folks who go in to gamble, park their cars up on the parking ones right up towards the front. And I don't know, but I'd love if you would address if there's enough parking spaces at your other gas stations in Tinley or elsewhere, and whether or not this meets those needs.
Yeah, in regards to that, actually, they don't necessarily park in the front. We find that most of our customers will park on the side parking, just because they know they might be staying a little bit longer. Now, you might get the occasional one that parks in the front, but majority of our customers do park on the side. As Dan had mentioned, the code is a little old, from 1978, and mentions, a grease rack and a service bay, and that's what's considered as a dispenser. So you're having like 3 spaces for the dispenser. That's what's elevating these numbers. If you look just as the retail market, in terms of the number of spaces required per square foot for the parking there, we're right there. We're actually a little bit over. If you just take that nuance out of the code and make it, which apparently is going to be the future plans for that. So in light of that, we're very cognizant of the parking. We have 58 parking, which is really generous and will provide the parking. We're in total agreement with the staff comments about making the farthest ones employee parking for less movement out there and such. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just, I had my notes here, parking variance, no issue, because I do agree with staff. I just know from our own my own use, and people park at pumps, you gas in, you go in, you may grab your donut or your coffee or whatever, and then you leave. You don't drive from the pump to a separate parking stall, and then, so I think there's probably, based on that, it's probably okay.
And the fueling stalls almost can function as additional parking, because I know I've gone, if all the front ones are full and I'm running in for probably a Red Bull, you just park, and all the pumps are open, you'll just park at the pump, run in, even if you're not fueling, you'll find a way out here. There's a lot of space, so, those kind of function as spillover parking too, that can give you convenient parking. So there's quite a bit.
I think 58 spots is pretty generous. You know, my complaint was with the gas and wash on 181st and 88th Avenue, where it's packed all the time and you can't even get a parking spot 'cause it's that busy. But this, I think you're fine here. 58 spots should be pretty good.
Okay. Any other comments about the parking from the commissioners? Okay.
If I could just make a brief comment?
Sure, go ahead, Christian. Yeah.
One of the things we want to just, for the understanding, even though we're asking for a lot of sign variances because of the direction in that, the allowable signage square footage is 709 square feet, and we're only asking for 454. So we're really not asking to over-sign the site. We're just asking to put the signage in the right place. And then also the FAR ratio for this site is only 8% of the allowable 100%. So in terms of, yes, it's a big site and we've got a lot of things happening, but if you look at the true numbers, the FAR ratio is only 8%. So I wanted to point that out as well. Then we also wanted to thank actually the commission, because from your comments last time, the one member is not here this evening, stated about putting the roadway between the car wash and the C-store like it is on 183rd in Harlem. And that, I don't know, sometimes you look at a site plan and you're just modifying little parts of it. That turned a light bulb in my head. And when we looked at it and we started that way, we put the drive between the car wash and the C-store. That automatically pushed the CFL to the south, which automatically pushed the detention down. So we want to thank you for those comments, and you guys actually drove the changes, and we all feel that it is a better plan.
Well, we appreciate the comments. We appreciate the fact that you heard us, and there's, some collaboration there. So, thank you once again. With that, I will ask if there's anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item. Please approach, and I'll swear you in. And can you state your name, please?
Amanda Reardon?
Amanda?
Yes.
Amanda, do you swear to affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. As I stated, my name is Amanda Reardon. I do live in a nearby residential subdivision that exits out onto 183rd. I live in the Mansfield Court townhomes, which are a little over half a mile to the east of this site. If you know any of the backstory of the improvements that were made to 183rd when it was widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, and then also the development of our particular subdivision remains unfinished. There are 167 townhome units there, with additional units that are going to be built to the north of that will then create additional opportunities for us to exit out onto 179th Street. But for the past 15, 18, 20 years, we have been without any other means of ingress and egress to our homes other than 183rd Street. So for us as residents, and especially in our subdivision, we take, grave concern when anything is going to impact 183rd Street. I can try to summarize just a little bit of when the street was widened. The county did essentially placate some of the residential concerns as it got widened by not officially designating 183rd Street as a no truck route. They did, however, put no truck route signs at either end between 80th Avenue and LaGrange Road, so that it was an attempt to minimize trucks turning right to utilize 183rd to access I-80 using Harlem Avenue, which I can tell you as residents in the area, we don't get on I-80 at LaGrange Road. We go the other direction because in two stoplights, you can be on I-80, whereas in peak times, when you are trying to get onto LaGrange Road, you can be sitting on 183rd for sometimes 3 or 4 courses of that light. So from our standpoint as residents, it didn't take us long to figure out after 183rd was improved that it's quicker to go the other way. We don't believe that take very long for truckers to also figure that out. So we don't necessarily have a concern, we do have a concern with more vehicular traffic in as much as we are concerned about truck traffic turning right to utilize 183rd to go through to Harlem Avenue to get on I-80. I didn't find out about this meeting until last night. I literally printed this out and I read it as I sat back. I do have some issues with what I'm seeing in the staff report and in the traffic report that nobody has seemed to touch on tonight, specifically the level of service levels that we are talking about on White Egret, northbound, people waiting and the level of service of people getting out off of White Egret onto 183rd Street. Those are some very low service levels that I read in the traffic study. I can tell you just as a matter of background, I have a background in planning. I used to be a village planner here in Tinley. So when I talk about level of service, I understand what level of service is and I understand what those levels are in that report. I see some disconnects, unfortunately, in the staff report, as thorough as it is. I see the village engineer making some statements regarding the amount of traffic generated will cause congestion and delays. So there is some acknowledgement there, potentially, in my mind, sounding of some alarms in terms of the traffic. And then as I read through the proposed findings of fact presented by staff, by planning staff, I see, a complete almost ignoring of that and actually saying that that traffic is going to be okay. And so I'm wondering if staff and/or the petitioner can speak to that disconnect and speak more to these anticipated level of service that we would see as a concern.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Amanda. You can stay there if you want,
Okay.
just to, would anybody with the staff want to address Amanda's comments on the,
Well, do you wanna touch on it a little bit, and then I can as well?
Yeah, I don't need to
Yes, please, Dana.
stand.
And
Yeah.
and you know what, here's it's page 8 of 20 this is what she's referencing. It says, "The village engineer states that the amount of traffic generated by the proposed project will cause congestion and delays that will affect current and future patrons of the proposed and surrounding development arriving by vehicle," right? So that's what you're referring to. Dana, if you want to field that.
And I'll say some of that is from the original proposal, so some of this has changed.
Sure.
There is still, it's not perfect, like we said.
Right, right.
But I can let Dana kind of dive into it.
Well, that is pretty much what I was going to say, is that there are concerns in this area, and with this revised site plan, we have taken big steps to move forward in a direction that we felt like was going to be a compromise from all ends. We are also limited because 183rd is under the jurisdiction of the county, and so as staff and as the applicant, we've been trying to connect with Cook County to see what that short-term and long-term plans could be and will be, and trying to work together with the different parties to put together a plan for what will happen at that intersection. There's no guarantee where trucks are going to turn or not turn, but it is something, I know we've talked with the village engineer too here on staff as far as what can be done long-term to kind of keep an eye. I mean, we've explored different alternatives that just did not seem feasible or within the realm of reason for this particular applicant to have to handle with their project.
Fair enough. So when you guys reached out to the county, I mean, to me, just from, not just Amanda's testimony, but like, people have mentioned it even, over a month ago, that that, and it's even in the staff report that you gotta wait, she said about 4 or 5 revolutions at peak times for that light to clear it. I mean, so I know that the county want, you know, it's a chicken and egg, as Dan mentioned, but like, I would think like, you'd be like, well, you know, I don't have to be a prophet, but I could probably project that once, you know, if this is built and once you get that added traffic, that is gonna be even more of an issue. And then it sounded like there was a development gonna come in around you, Amanda, is that right? Even more vehicles?
Gallagher and Henry owns the land to the north of 183rd, between 183rd and 179. And that will eventually be single-family residential homes. My point was that initially that was all intended to be developed all at once, and then the bottom fell out of the market in 2008, so it sat there vacant. The impact of that was that the village never required Gallagher and Henry to build the public streets to go north out onto 179.
Fair enough, okay.
Essentially leaving us.
Channelized
Right,
yeah.
we are essentially a.
Ingress,
half-mile
egress
long-
on 183rd only, and you could either go, you know, east towards Harlem or west towards
Correct.
LaGrange.
We are essentially 167 units in a cul-de-sac.
Sure.
We have no other route other than 183rd.
Fair enough. So just refocusing Dana, so, I mean, I would think, and I know it's just conversations with the county, they want to see it, and then, and that could be years, and then you're going to have that congestion for a bit, right? Would be my understanding of the chicken and the egg issue that we have here.
I mean, there's gonna be, there's already some traffic, there is gonna be some. I think in all likelihood, the signal is gonna end up being required out there, and then that ties into IDOT, obviously. I think right now you could probably do dual left turn lanes out onto LaGrange. It's even that width on 183rd Street. So maybe there are some kind of minor things in the beginning. If you had dual turn lanes there, it would help ensure vehicles didn't back up as far east to potentially this intersection. Because you could stack twice as much traffic there. And there's enough width there to, I mean, that could be a quick fix of an additional turn lane and an additional signal head up on the top, and you could have dual turn lanes. So there are some little things that could happen in the meantime, but the coordination of that light and
Right.
everything else that's gonna happen, I think that will resolve a lot of the issues, and the White Eagle service levels would improve at that point. In the meantime, it is
But even
that,
then,
like,
just the
okay,
time to construct that will cause more congestion, but in the long run, it would be better. But I'm just saying, like, okay, well, I understand, like, this is still remnants of what we had before. You kind of peppered in what has changed, so,
And talking about if there's anything we can do to make sure trucks leaving here, that maybe there's an additional sign that says no truck right turns
Yeah.
there onto it, maybe that's something we could look
Yeah.
at.
although then
Not that
channelize. yeah.
not that every truck's gonna follow it, but
But-
hey, if it can help encourage that from not happening,
Yeah.
and
If you
that's
get one
maybe
truck
something-
waiting at that stoplight and a second truck, and they don't make it, that, you might be blocking. I don't have an easy solution for that.
And it is tough, I mean, we're still waiting, still waiting on the county's full review on it.
Sure.
So some of these
Sure.
improvements may be coming out of that. We're in contact with them too to kind of help. So is the petitioner. We all want to
Right.
see their full review and what it's going to look like.
Right, it's still kind of a fluid issue on some of those to help, hopefully, help access and alleviate some of those issues. And then my understanding is White Eagle's gonna get slightly improved as well, right, with this development. So there will be some improvements there, but it does sound like there will be some, there'll be some cooperation needed from Cook County, you know, to fully make this, untangle this so that it's not some traffic nightmare for people trying to get on LaGrange going west on 183rd, even just the patrons for the gas station, so.
Just to
Okay.
add one other piece to that, as part of that untangling is the IDOT involvement too, because of the interconnected signals there. So the county has to make decisions, but they're also going to have to go to IDOT. So we've got a handful of entities here trying to work together, and we know the design and the permitting and the construction is going to take some time. So,
Of course.
and since there already are some, traffic concerns today without anything being built there, you have to assess a level of fairness as far as how much do you saddle this development, even though they're bringing a fair amount of vehicular traffic to this location, but there already is, an existing situation that we
True.
can't just hold them up to do that in all fairness. And that's, of course, up to your group and the village board to make that decision. But, as we work with developers like this all the time, we're trying to make those assessments as far as what a reasonable package looks like to move forward.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dana.
Sure.
Yes, Amanda.
In your discussions with the county specifically, is there an ETA on when they may have their review done? And in terms specifically as it relates to this approval timeline process of going to the village board?
We have not heard a timeline, and I don't know if the applicant has heard anything more recently, but we did, on behalf of the village, reach out to the county to try to, put this closer to the top of their pile and expedite, between meetings here to try to get some additional input, but they have not committed to a timeline as far as I know. Yeah, we're
And
here.
we do have this conditioned upon, they are still gonna need their permit. It is subject to final engineering approval, so there are still some adjustments that could be made, but we basically got to a point where the county holding up the initial zoning of this, we wanted to move this along, but obviously still make sure they have to go through the county approval process. The county's gonna sign the plat as well, so, that still has to happen.
I understand
Yep.
how the process works, in all fairness, I do understand. We've spoken tonight about the chicken and an egg, and I don't know where the chicken and the egg is in terms of simply waiting for, at least some commentary from the county that we can put into the record. That's my opinion on it, it's not a question.
I would just urge staff to just continue to reach out, until we get some sort of response, regarding this. So, and I understand it doesn't happen lightning quick, but sometimes just the persistive, if you can have persistence to that, hopefully you'll get some, at least the ball rolling kind of, because that is, it is, they're tied to quite a bit in here, so, and it would even change possibly their design, so,
We have been talking at a staff level to try to figure out what submittal status we might be a reasonable submittal from the applicant in terms of that traffic and moving that forward in regards to the overall entitlement permit issuance process. And so with those same concerns, just to try to keep things moving with that forward momentum and not wait until, 4.5 years from now, if we're talking about 5 years, we want to make sure that these submittals are happening within a forward momentum to make sure that this doesn't sit.
100%. I get it, like, you got to design, with it coming off the entrance, exits coming off of White Eagle, have it, the county, you haven't heard from, so this is what you have as your plan for this time. Now, it's fluid, so when you hear back, whenever that is, then necessary adjustments can be made, and then I'll kind of repeat this process, we'll
Right,
be back here, but
right.
understood. I know it doesn't Rome wasn't built in a day, and you don't always get the information as soon as you want it. But just keep trying, and in good faith, hopefully, we'll hear sooner than later, and hopefully it's good news, for everybody, not just, the petitioner, but the residents surrounding it, and, the people who use that to get on LaGrange Road, for their commute to work or whatnot, so.
And I'll say the county has completed a review. The big thing that kind of would change is they wanted a signal warrant study. So obviously that's kind of what would affect some of these changes. But for the most part, they have done that review. They have given kind of their initial designs, and that's why a lot was kind of tweaked here. But obviously that signal warrant and then the connection to LaGrange Road and IDOT
Right.
That's the details that still need to get worked out, so, and that's typically for just about any project, that's kind of this level we require them to go. And it's nothing against the county or MWRD or some of these other
Right.
ones. If you waited for everything to kind of get final approvals, you'd be waiting a very long time, so we, kind of like Dana said, we're looking to take steps forward, make sure we have conditions that protect the design, but they have submitted to them, they have had those conversations. So
Okay.
we'll keep working with them, and staying in contact with them, so that way we know this is working, and if they change their mind, or they have something major that would affect the site, we do have protection in the conditions to at least, be able to make some adjustments
Okay.
if we need to.
Amanda?
This is just a process question in terms of what you're proposing is conditions. Where are those conditions found in any document or recommendation that leaves this body? Do you implant those into their findings of fact?
Yeah, it's into the ordinance, so right now, they're just recommended conditions by the plan commission, and then when the board adopts the ordinance, those are conditions of that ordinance. So I believe it's the special use. Yeah, I believe it's a special use for the service station that those will be attached to, because that is kind of the thing that creates the traffic, and the traffic circulation. So it's attached, the requirements of that special use for the service station.
And then does this body, when they make a motion, do they adopt your findings of fact, or do they generally make their own, or how do they?
We recommend some upfront, just because of the way if they had to create them up here every time they had a public hearing, it'd take a lot of time. So we kind of recommend some initial ones. They have them there, and they can make any adjustments, amendments, additions, deletions they want. So we just kind of do an initial feel of where we're going, and then they adopt accordingly themselves. So.
And I just have a question for the chair. If I may make a request of the board in making their findings of fact recommendations, when it relates to letter E, adequate measures have been taken or will be taken to provide ingress of design to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets, that at least some acknowledgement be made that we don't have commentary yet from the county, that concerns have been raised from a resident.
I'm looking for, because there's many E's here.
Oh, sorry, I'm on page 14 of 20.
Okay, I am further back than you'll hear.
Just in terms of making your findings of fact that you're presenting to the village board as part of your recommendation, as it's written by staff, that they don't generally have any concerns over the traffic impact, whereas I believe we should.
Well, I mean, also, everything is also final engineer approved, correct, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, the overall condition of for that special use has the so it's
Final
kind of like
approval.
those standards are based upon the conditions that'll be attached to it as well.
Yeah.
And that's the one that has, at the end of this, the recommended conditions for the signal, working with Cook County, as well as approval is subject to final engineering review and approval. So those are the conditions. We didn't write them into the findings as well, but that's all adopted for you guys for your recommendation, and then put into the ordinance when the board adopts it.
Right, so my understanding is it's got to be approved by engineers. And so this, where it says to minimize traffic congestion. So even any small effort to minimize, it doesn't say eliminate. So like, here today, even staff mentioned possibly down the line, a double left-hand turn lane. But in terms of, I'm not the engineer for that's finally stamping it, it's gonna have to get approved by that, so, so I would just stick by what E says. I don't think it has to, be further augmented by that, because what staff said here today, I do believe they are working with the county and also IDOT, and so I don't think that, those conversations didn't happen. I think they have happened, and they need future conversations. So I think they are in that process of taking reasonable measures, to minimize that. hopefully, if they do get a signal down the line and possibly a double left-hand turn lane, which doesn't sound like something you could do right away, but that would hopefully not just minimize, but hopefully eliminate most of that. So I think the language is fine as is. I don't think, just because it's baked in where all this stuff that we're looking at does need final engineer review and approval by the village engineer. And I am not, we're just a recommending body to the board. The board will make the final decision. So, Dana?
One other tidbit that might be helpful to know is that the county did put in writing their request for the traffic signal warrant analysis. And that's, kind of part of that umbrella to see what the county's actually going to say, and they have done that. I believe that's underway, that's moving forward, so I would consider that as part of this umbrella for Cook County approval as well as, village engineering review.
Okay. Amanda, that is our position on that. I just wanted to make sure it's clear for you and that we're on the same page in terms of understanding. So I think, if there was something I felt needed to be peppered in there, I wouldn't have an issue. But I think I have confidence in the staff and what they earnestly do. So, with that said, is there any other people wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, could I have a motion to close the public hearing? Okay, motion made by Commissioner Sepisi. Do I hear a second?
Sure, second.
Seconded by Commissioner Truxell. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing for item 3 is closed. The staff, I know you mentioned the standards, they're long, so if you just want to,
Yeah, it's generally the summary of the project within here,
Sure.
what we discussed today, so.
as in the staff report, okay.
Yeah, they're in the staff report and briefly on the screen here as well.
Okay, thank you, Dan. At this time, we'll move to the motions. I believe we have 4. We'll move on to motion 1, which is regarding the special uses.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend the village board grant special use permits for an automobile service station and an automobile car wash when attached to an automobile service station to the petitioner, Leonard McInerney of Gas and Wash at 18301 LaGrange Road in the B3 General Business and Commercial Zoning District, in accordance with the plans submitted and adopt the findings of fact as proposed in the August 17th, 2023 staff report, subject to the conditions proposed in said staff report.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Truxell, seconded by Commissioner Hamilton. Lori, could I have a roll call?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, motion 1 is carried. Now may I have a motion number 2 regarding the variation approvals?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to recommend that the village board grant 14 variations from the zoning ordinance as listed in the August 17th, 2023 staff report pertaining to parking, signage, and urban design to the petitioner, Leonard McInerney of Gas and Wash, to permit the construction of an automobile service station and car wash at 18301 LaGrange Road in accordance with the plans submitted and the adopted findings of fact as proposed in the staff report.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Hamilton, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi. Lori, could I have a roll call?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, motion number 2 is carried. Now may I have a motion number 3 regarding the site plan and architectural approval?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to grant site plan and architectural approval to the petitioner, Leonard McInerney of Gas and Wash, for the development of a gas station with a convenience store, 2 interior drive-throughs, a truck fueling area, and a car wash at 18301 LaGrange Road in accordance with the plan submitted and adopt the findings of fact as proposed in the August 17th, 2023 staff report, subject to the conditions proposed in said staff report.
Do we hear a second?
Second?
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Sepisi, seconded by Commissioner Hamilton. Lori, can I have a roll call?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, motion number 3 is carried. And I may have the final motion, motion 4, regarding the plat of subdivision.
It's probably my turn. Can you put that back? Thanks. Chair, I make a motion to recommend the village board grant approval of the final plat of subdivision to the petitioner, Leonard McInerney of Gas and Wash for the White Eagle Drive subdivision in accordance with the final plat submitted and dated May 9, 2023, subject to final review and approval by the village engineer and the village attorney.
Okay, do I have a second, hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Merrick, seconded by Commissioner Truxell. Lori, could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell,
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, motion is carried. This item will go to the village board September 5th, 2023. Mr. McHenry, please get with the staff on how to attend. With that, good luck.
Very good, thank you.
Yep. And you're free to go. We will move on to the 4th and
Yep, we'll be in contact.
final item for tonight.
Just some info.
Item 4 is a workshop to consider recommending that the village board grant West Point Builders, Inc. on behalf of Tinley Park Main Street LLC a special use final plat of subdivision, plat of vacation, rezoning, variations, and a text amendment for the mixed-use development West Point at Harmony Square. The project includes a 5-story mixed-use building on North Street with commercial space on the first floor and 62 residential units located above. Additionally, the development includes 63 townhome units at the former site of Central Middle School. Site plan and final plat approval are also being considered at the meeting. Staff, please make your presentation.
Thanks, Chairman, and this is just a workshop, so the point of these is really to get the project out there, see what it is, address any immediate open items, so that way, when they come for the public hearing, which is, for this is gonna be on September 7th, that they'll come prepared, that if there is any immediate concerns, open items, things like that, they can come into that already knowing it instead of hearing it at the public hearing. So it's really just to get the project out there for both you as the Plan Commission and the public to see what it is. You may not have all the questions, this might not be fully sank in here, if you guys haven't completely dug into the staff report, that's fine. If the Plan Commission or anybody in the public has questions going forward, we got 2 to 3 weeks here before that public hearing. This is kind of when we want to hear the questions, concerns as well, and we pass those on to the petitioner if there's anything that they can address too. So for this, it's an exciting development. I think it's something that a development on North Street in downtown has been on the docket for quite some time. I think early 2000s, maybe even before that, has really been in plans to see a redevelopment of this area. So this is just kind of one of the steps going on out here. So I'll walk through it all today and then kind of show you where we're headed. This is what kind of one half of the development. This is kind of a rendering of what they're going to be doing on North Street and just east of a public plaza that the village is developing. And then again, just showing you where we're headed is that mixed-use 5-story building on North Street, and then the former Central Middle School site to the north of that. They're going to be looking for townhomes to get developed. With some of the open items, I'll also note in this, the petitioner has already taken some of the steps actually to address these over the last week, so they have a separate small presentation as well where they can tell you kind of what they've worked on in the meantime and what they're anticipating to have for the public hearing. The existing site and history, so the developments on North Street, it's gonna have two different portions kind of it. You have the North Street portion, or sorry, the first part's kind of the old Central Middle School site, that's to the north on this, and it's there in the yellow, or the number 1 star that's up there. So that kind of rectangle central there, that housed Central Middle School from like the 1930s to 2003, when it was demolished and Central Middle School moved down Oak Park Avenue. That land was then transitioned to the village as kind of the best person to help that redevelopment occur, in anticipating that it was likely going to redevelop with whatever happened on North Street. Since both of those kind of by themselves were smaller, this kind of created a little bit of synergy and enough kind of mass to get hopefully the type of development the village was looking to get out there. The second area is to the south of that and is on North Street. That has multiple lots out there. It's traditionally kind of been detached single-family homes in this corner of North Street. And most recently, the kind of last one that was standing out there, pretty dilapidated. Once it was, this land was originally obtained by the village, that was demolished really quickly. So I know our Public Works Department was working hard on that, and glad to see that cleared out there, because it was pretty blighted and an eyesore. So for the most part now, this is all kind of empty, ready to develop land. As part of that kind of second part on North Street, there's also going to be a portion of vacated right-of-way that's 173rd Street that kind of separates these two properties. And that's always kind of been in the plan for quite some time, to be able to kind of help these two areas connect. And then also, as you're kind of looking at the plans for the plaza to the west of this, where there'll be a 67th Court extension, it still allows for the right kind of vehicle circulation around this area. So there's a small portion of or it's about a half acre of total right-of-way there that'll be vacated and brought into this development as well.
And that's a one-way extension, right? Going south? Based on how the parking is?
Yeah, 67th Court is
Extension.
proposed to one way right now. I believe that's going to be completed, designed by the village. So they have, in some of these plans, they kind of basically show the concept plans that the village has had to this point. We actually, the board had just approved kind of some of the contracts for final designs on this. So we're not 100% there at construction level documents or anything
enough.
yet. This is just conceptual, but yeah, I believe that's one way through there. And again, to the west of this, a lot of this development, particularly that mixed-use development that we're going towards, obviously the synergy is here, has kind of been going hand in hand with this development, is really a public-private partnership to acquire the property, develop the area. To the west of this is kind of the center of it, which is going to be the village's Harmony Square Plaza. Lots of plans there to have an ice rink and really have it activated year-round. A lot of the days of the year, there's going to be events going on there. And even on the days there isn't formal events, you're still going to have things to do out there. So we're pretty excited to have something like this in downtown Tinley, and then really have the development around it that, one, helps activate the plaza, but then the plaza can also help, if there's businesses or residents, have a better kind of living environment out here in downtown Tinley and in Tinley Park. So this is just kind of some renderings that we've had to this point, and again, it's under final design by the village currently. So zoning wise, this is two areas. So where the townhomes are going, the old Central Middle School site, that's zoned downtown general, and then that more kind of further to the North Street site, that is zoned downtown core. So downtown general is a little bit more multifamily residential type zoning, and downtown core is a higher density type zoning that's really looking for mixed use buildings, a lot like the Boulevard. Their phase one development is kind of showing you an intent there of what they're trying to do with the mixed-use building, as well as what they're gonna be proposing here for this development. So, nearby uses, Oak Park Avenue Metro Station's to the south of this, so you got the commuter lot and the Oak Park Avenue train station there. To the west, you have the vacant land that'll become the 67th Avenue extension, and then further west is the Harmony Square Plaza. Currently, that's zoned downtown core. The village's intent is to zone that civic, since it'll obviously be a civic use out there. That'll be coming before the plan commission as well. The village actually has to rezone our own properties, so it'll still go through this same process for a plat of subdivision and rezoning for that. And that should be trailing not too far behind this portion of the development, so. To the particularly surrounding the townhomes, there's other townhomes as well as detached single-family lots to the west and the east of that development. Those are zoned downtown general as well as downtown flex. Downtown flex was really built in as a way that you could really do commercial or single-family in some of those older structures. It also built in some flexibility, which is where the name came from, to kind of make sure those older structures could be kept. So you'll kind of see a lot of times they're on the older properties, on the older homes, that allowed that flexibility of uses as well as the flexibility in the zoning and the development pattern to allow those homes to stay. If somebody wanted to redevelop it, it still allows for that as well. But the goal was really to keep kind of the character of what we had in some of these places and not tear everything down and start from scratch. So really work with what we have and build upon that. To the north of that townhome development as well, then you have the Midlothian Creek, and on the other side of that, you have some park space to the north as well. The downtown core, again, the goal is really kind of walkability there, and transit-oriented development is really the focus. So to kind of try and keep that, get some density there in the core around the train station that's walkable to the train station, as well as walkable to a lot of businesses. Overall, the legacy plans also kind of wanted to increase some commercial density there in the center. And instead of having it kind of spread up and down and sporadic on Oak Park Avenue, try and push that a little more to the core and then build up some increased density around that in residential to either townhomes or multifamily, or even a lot of the districts allow for kind of smaller single-family lots that you'll see to, again, kind of increase the head count around the downtown and get the types of uses we're really looking for in our downtown core. There is a zoning text amendment that's proposed here, and the original kind of legacy code and the legacy plan really didn't envision the plaza where it's at today. So that's really been a shift based upon economics, land availability, and just kind of a vision of where that was going to be has changed. I think originally they were pushing more kind of towards the metro station, which really hasn't worked out. And this site was kind of settled on quite a few years ago before I ever got here. So that's kind of changed again within the code and the vision. Originally, this North Street was going to be developed basically all privately developed, and you'd have the mixed-use buildings. But now with the plaza, it really, and the village's vision for that has really shifted where you'd want to see the commercial and kind of where it's most preferred. So our marketing department, the planning department, administration, public works has spent a lot of time even kind of going to look at other public plazas. And one of the keys is really to activate as many sides of it as you can of the plaza itself. And if you can get those kind of, even if it's just service uses and things like that, you want people coming and going to businesses, walking around it and being activated. So the key here was that it was actually a staff recommendation to, rather than go kind of further east down North Street with commercial, really have that commercial preferably front the plaza there. So that's kind of what they're proposing, is kind of remove what's required street level commercial that's along North Street and essentially move that over to where that 67th Court extension will come down in the plaza. So that's one of their requests there. Overall here, again, for the uses they're proposing, the mixed-use development that has a 5-story building on North Street. The first floor has got that first floor commercial. It's got some residential amenities, an office, packages, community room, things like that on the first floor, as well as then a large portion of it, and this will really affect kind of the architecture of the building, and what we've worked with the petitioner on is a parking garage down there on the first floor, which is what our code wants. It wants to kind of see the parking within the footprint of a building. It adds to walkability. It adds to not having surface parking lots as much as possible in these urban areas. So they've accomplished that, but then there's always this push and pull with how do you treat that from an architectural perspective. So floors 2 through 5, there's where you have the 62 then residential units with this multi-use building here. Then separate to that with the townhomes, they have 63 townhomes proposed there that are be 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom. Out of all of these units, everything meets the code minimums for size of the dwelling units minus the 5 studio apartments they're proposing in the mixed use. That's around 704, and kind of a similar request to what the Boulevard made. I think theirs were around 730, somewhere around there for some of the 1-bedrooms they had. And really the point of that is that there's been a trend to smaller living spaces. There's a demand from kind of, especially younger people, to hopefully cut some of the costs out and that they don't need all of kind of these large apartment spaces. Also, the amenities kind of help offset that as well. So we'll get to kind of the couple apartment decks, the fitness centers, bike storage, all of that used to happen kind of within your own apartment space, and they have those amenities elsewhere that kind of helps compensate for some of that loss. But only 5 of the units did they have that variation request. So the other 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, 3-bedrooms, all meet the code required minimum sizes. So overall here with the site plan, they've kind of connected the, kind of have a circulation through the townhome system to, that one tried to front some of the townhomes along the roads, kind of create a street wall, a nice walkable frontage there, kind of gives you that row home feel on 67th Court. But then also maximizing kind of the space and what they could build in there is kind of how that private roadway lays out throughout there, as well as allowing circulation of emergency vehicles, garbage trucks, loading trucks, things like that to make sure they could circulate through that development. And then with the mixed-use development, there's not too much to talk about site plan-wise because they're really trying to maximize that space. But there is a surface parking lot proposed kind of to the north of that garage there that gets them to their minimum parking, as well as some additional parking then for guests. So doesn't fully maximize it, but comes close to it with the building that they have there. Also proposed is a kind of pocket park with the townhomes, with some space there, create a little bit of green space and yard space for those people to utilize, and then a dog park that's to the north of the mixed-use building, as well as a patio kind of out in that area. For open items, we also have just discussing dining space availability for the mixed-use building. The goal is hopefully to get a restaurant-type tenant into that ground floor. So discussing kind of what kind of patio, and again, I think the petitioners thought a little bit through that. So they have a couple exhibits to show what they can do there based on the current layout. We'd like to at least, again, see some kind of seating area that can go out there, help activate the plaza as well. So, and I'll note, final streetscape plans still under design. Lakota Group's been working on a streetscape plan for the village. They're also the ones helping design the plaza. So they're kind of gonna do the final review, make sure these are kind of fitting within the village's plan. The goal, again, is this should tie it should look very similar to what South Street did with their development, and then the goals, the plaza's kind of gonna have a very similar material, feel, features, lights, benches, garbage cans, everything should kind of start matching here. That's kind of the goal, is eventually the entire downtown has this kind of similar feel, within the public right away. So they did do some planning on it, but it's not finalized yet. And it actually probably won't be at the public hearing, but before they get final construction documents, they'll have to kind of meet whatever the streetscape plan requirements are there. Here's the floor plan, so you can see to the, at the kind of bottom left of this is where the commercial space is. And then to the top left, you'll see kind of where the residential amenities, the entrance, club room, club lounge, and the fitness center, as well as kind of garbage disposal for the building and storages as well within that space. And then obviously the rest of the buildings have parking garage on the first floor. One thing that'll probably come up in this is, can you put the parking garage underground? It's very, very expensive to do that, and it's become a hurdle on this property as well as almost any other property in the village, that to do that basically creates financial hurdles that can't be overcome by the rents that are charged for these, or any development. So preferred, you could go underground for days and you could have all the parking you want, but that adds a pretty high cost to these overall projects that just not very viable from a financial perspective. And again, this petitioner is not the first one. The last two developers we've talked to on this property have kind of run into that hurdle as well. Parking garages, underground parking, pretty expensive. When you're trying to loop that into rents, financing, things like that, the numbers typically don't work out. Second floor of this is where the apartments start, but it's also where they'll have a couple amenity decks. One's gonna kind of overlook the plaza, so the residents, if there's a show, a Music in the Plaza show out there, they'll be able to actually sit up on that second floor deck and overlook the plaza. Cool people watching space, show space there, as well as an amenity deck that's kind of back off the back, and that'll be a nice kind of lounge space for them as well. And that's kind of going over the parking garage a little bit there, so. Again, some open items just to have a discussion. There's about 8 units in the total building that won't have a balcony. They have other outdoor space, they have this amenity space. They are most of the studio spaces again, and then a couple of the 1-bedrooms are in there as well. So just a discussion on if that's needed, or if there's any desire to have that. A discussion about kind of how they can maybe describe how they're planning on managing the fenced patios, because you have basically these patios and then those amenity decks kind of on the same level. And I believe their proposal is to kind of fence the private patios, but obviously there's some, it's a little unique in that you'll have a private patio, and then right on the other side of that, you're gonna have it be open to the residents. So just kind of discuss how they plan on managing that. Open item 6 we have is a variation, so to setback, basically floors 2 through 5 will be about 24 feet back from the property line. You can see there kind of the first floor commercial space kind of comes out to the property line like we want it, but then there's a little setback to the floors 2 through 5 that happen there. So they do get a little bit of that deck space out there on floor 2, and they don't push it all the way forward. So they could do that. It would make for bigger units. I don't think they see a value with the construction costs on that, to be able to get the rents that they would need to kind of afford that. And it'd be tough for it to add any kind of additional units. So I can let them speak a little bit more to that. We brought up, did it make any sense to really kind of have this all on one plane? It adds a little bit of intrigue there on that setback as well. Usually it happens a little higher up the building, you step it back than the second floor, but they've kind of looked at the different options there and preferred the option that they have before you today. Here's just some of the patio amenities that'll be on the property. First floor commercial, so this is a special use that they'll be requesting to basically have the amenities of the apartments and the residential on the first floor. So you can request a special use where there's required first floor commercial, which they're requesting to move that to this frontage. They're proposing to use about half of that, a little less than half of it, for residential amenities, while keeping the other half for a commercial frontage. And the goal of that special use is really to make sure it kind of still works with where you want commercial. Does it still look and kind of feel like that commercial type space? So they've tried to lay out those uses for those amenities appropriately, so that way it still kind of activates that frontage in the space that they have there. But it is taking about that kind of main frontage for this. About half of that will be the residential entrance and amenities there. And again, the kind of outdoor patio space there for the commercial spaces being discussed. Loading and trash, we kind of outlined what their proposal is there. You kind of have two situations going on here. You have the mixed-use building. Most of that's kind of kept inside, and they'll typically have a trash hauler come, pick up the trash. They either may need to roll them out, they're usually rolling dumpsters, or the trash companies can be paid to take them out and put them back in as well. So I'll leave it up to them to kind of let you know how they operate these. And this kind of came up with Bremen Station, which was a development not built yet. It's actually to the west of where the boulevard is, between the boulevard and Citibank was where that was proposed. But we kind of had the similar discussion with that as well. Some of it's just operational and management. A lot of times you'll have to rely on the apartment complex to roll these out, roll them back in. If they don't, we usually have to take it to enforcement level. Usually not a big deal though. Obviously we don't have a lot of mixed use, high level developments, so we haven't had to deal with it too much. Boulevard hasn't been much of an issue, and they kind of have that similar, they have to roll them out on garbage day, and then the management staff's there to bring them back in after they get picked up. For the townhome units, that's a little bit different there. They're gonna have kind of your traditional garbage toters for single-family homes that I believe they're planning on having them store within the garages. Obviously, they don't have kind of any screened areas, any common area trash areas in that. So our concerns, obviously, it's pretty rough if we're working towards density here, but then you have this, okay, you're gonna have 120 toters potentially out there with garbage and trash. So how they plan on managing that out there, where they end up storing them, I believe they're proposing within the garage, the attached garages is where they'd have to be stored. And just kind of having them discuss how they plan on managing that. And any consideration for kind of common trash areas that might help. Architectural wise, so this is, for this building, they've kind of worked through quite a bit already on where they came from on this building. So we've gone through a few iterations, looking at the materials, the colors, kind of the designs to come up with what's before you guys today. So we have just an open item. They do need to show kind of what the exact material percentages are. But in general, they've used the material requirements that we require, which is brick and then fiber cement board siding. Most commonly, it's hardy board, but there's some other materials as well. So they can use fiber cement board, brick, and stone, which is the majority of what they're proposing to use here. With, there is a few small EPIS areas, which is really more kind of the cornice or kind of the design elements between the windows and the floors. So small amounts there, and appears to be under the 15% maximum. So we just need to clarify those requirements. This is obviously that kind of the main facade of the building with a commercial frontage carried across the front of this, even though the left side of this image is gonna be where those residential amenities are proposed. And then the right side is where the commercial space or spaces would be. The North Street elevation, it's the south elevation on North Street. This has kind of been where we've had to work with the developer quite a bit to figure out how we make this work. Because the majority of this frontage is parking spaces that back up to it, as well as then that's actually where they have the bike storage is hanging on the walls in front of the parking spaces for those residents. So there's only so much you could do. You could open it up, but you really don't want to look at cars in a parking garage either. You also don't want kind of a solid brick wall. So we've worked towards this, which really, some of it is a little bit for show, but it is to kind of help carry the commercial appearance of this building around a North Street, because that is still going to be very visible from the train station. It's going to be visible from Oak Park Avenue, and anybody coming to and from the plaza. So we do still really wanted to kind of look at this appearance. Those windows are essentially faux windows, but it is real glazing, so they'll essentially be blacked out windows. Because if they were real windows, you'd just be staring at a car. The alternative is, again, you'd have something that's a very solid kind of flat wall, and it's a fairly long one. So the goal, again, here was just create that appearance. In this is also a couple areas where they propose basically some village advertising signage. As we've kind of said, we have the plaza next to it. Can you show the bands for music in the plaza, the events that are going to happen? We'd like to see those. It's not 100% clear what that material would be behind it. We'd like to still see it be glazing, but then it could still be the village kind of promoting the farmer's market or things like that to kind of help activate and create some intrigue in that space along with the windows. And then in front of this too, there's going to be landscaping, so that even kind of helps soften it as well. As you're walking, you're going to have landscaping, actually on both sides of you. On the one side will be the streetscape, kind of planter boxes and trees, and on this side you'll have landscaping as well between the sidewalk and the building. So they've kind of done that, and we left that up as an open item too, just because this is kind of the facade that has created the most amount of kind of thought process and ideas. The petitioner's architect's gone through probably 3 or 4 versions of this to try and come up with kind of what's the best way to treat these facades. And here's kind of a couple of the previous versions that we originally went through on that facade to come up with, again, where we're kind of at today to carry that commercial appearance around. So better than the blank wall, better than just some of the windows. We're trying to kind of really carry that.
But no more planters and plantings?
There's still plantings along
Okay.
that. It's just not in the
Design
rendering.
concept, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think these are a little more hand-drawn renderings when the initial one was kind of more computer rendering, so. Going on to the north elevation, so they do still kind of carry those faux windows around to the different facades there. So these ones, a little less commercial appearance, they're gonna be facing more residential areas. So they still kind of help try and break up a solid brick wall and carry those windows kind of in line with what's going on in floors 2 through 5 and try and keep that same rhythm. And that's on the northern elevation, and then the eastern elevation kind of carries that same thing through. So we do still have open items to look at those facades, particularly on the first floor, and discuss the variation which requires 60% glazing on street level facades. Again, fairly hard for you to do when you're also trying to meet the requirement of putting parking under the roof. And then also where you have as many frontages as this building, so very often you'll have a development that has a true back to the building, or here in the downtown, you'd have buildings kind of built up to it on both sides as well. So here you don't really have that. All these facades on this entire building are visible, so it makes it really tough from a planning perspective to make the building work, make the interior work, and then how's that look on the outside of the building, and how do those relate, so. We do have an open item to show kind of plans of where they're going to put the rooftop equipment, and just basically ensure those are screened appropriately from any of the property lines or surrounding residential developments. Usually can estimate the kind of equipment sizes, where they'll be located on the roof. The further back they push them, the easier it is to screen and not bring them up towards the edges of the building, so. They do have carports proposed here, so they have, as we kind of, we'll dive into the parking, they don't have 100% of the 1-to-1 parking ratio, so the one parking spot per residential unit, which is 62 in the mixed-use building. Within that garage, I believe it's 39 in the garage, so what they've done is still try to create covered parking in their surface parking lot to at least meet the minimum. So every unit will have some type of covered parking spot. This is what they proposed. It's meant to kind of be a little simpler and not draw too much attention, kind of blend in with the overall development. But we have left it open to discuss how these fit in with the overall development, how the design is, and any consideration the petitioners had for kind of enclosed garages that might be able to have more kind of matching or similar materials. Those will obviously stand out a little more, but you can maybe have a blend with the development. Then looking at the townhomes, we do have material samples here for the townhome portion of this, and kind of show how those are gonna look. They've gone with a traditional townhome appearance here for the 63 units on the townhome. They vary up the colors, and I'll leave this to the petitioner because they have some pretty good exhibits in theirs that will show you the materials as well as how they plan on laying these out. They have a pretty set plan of where they're gonna put each color palette on each building to make sure that while these are all gonna look similar in design, it's not going to be 63 every single building. It looks exactly the same. So they have different materials, different brick, different colors on the siding. That at least brings some intrigue to it. So you also don't want every single building to look completely different. That would look a little odd as well. So I think they've tried to strike a good balance here with varying some of the design, some of the colors. They did show, we did call out, they show kind of separate or different siding styles between the line drawings and the color renderings. So if in this case, you almost look at the line drawing and it looks even more intriguing than the color rendering. And part of that's because of just how they flipped the different siding styles on the line drawing. So they kind of have the board and batten style with both vertical and horizontal type siding mixed into that. And it creates a little bit more intrigue where the color rendering just kind of kept it all the same style siding across it. So we just had them clarify which one they're doing, and with the recommendation that they go with something that kind of mixes it up a little bit. And I believe they have some considerations they made on that. Other architecture elevations have been designed to carry that brick around the first floor and kind of keep that intrigue going throughout the development. They've rear-loaded garages on these, so every single unit will have a rear-loaded 2-car garage. Helping them meet the parking minimums for that, and then also just, that's kind of the desire with townhomes these days. They do have kind of different side elevations, so they have a basically upgraded alternative side elevation that if you look at kind of the east side of this site, where they have the sides of these townhome units actually front the street and front up against residential. They've actually upgraded those elevations to basically create treatments that make it look like that's a little more of the front entrance. So it's not perfectly like the front elevation, but they add a door to that. They add the peak as well as a balcony on some of the other sides to again create that still kind of like a frontage along 67th Avenue for that development. Here's some of the exterior materials. Again, we have samples. We'll kind of go into that. Here's some of the examples of the streetscape that went in kind of around the downtown, what they're looking to do there. There's not too much of a landscape plan because really the goal of the legacy plan and the code's to maximize the development that we can get down there, maximize the building footprints. But again, they do have landscaping along that North Street facade. They have the park and the dog park as well, where they add some landscaping in, and then the streetscape landscaping as well, that'll be around it. Signage-wise is, they basically created one proposal for the retail tenants to have kind of similar style signs. Colors and logos, font will be different, but overall that style of sign. They've proposed a internally illuminated letters that'll, I believe, are on, like on a backer panel there. So they've proposed just kind of one style sign that would be, there could just be one tenant that goes into that space, or it could end up being, I think, as many as 3. It'll just depend kind of what the market shift is there, what interests they have. So, for the overall development sign, they do have, and it's just kind of common practice now with suburban and urban development, when you get these, to kind of help them have a brand of what the development is. Here we're West Point at Harmony Square, so they've added those signs. Obviously, the Boulevard's got the pretty large projecting sign that's on theirs. They've skipped that here. They've done kind of a simpler one that's up near the top of the facade here. They have proposed it on all 4 of the elevations. I don't think there's any concerns with the ones that front the plaza or the one that faces south along North Street. Those should work out fine. Staff has brought up some concerns with the ones that then face to the east or to the north, which will face more just kind of residential developments. To either consider, are those needed? And if they are needed, to at least make sure they're not illuminated. So we have that as an open item. Other signage in this includes kind of a small sign for the townhome entrances. They have 2 of those on that development, as well as then just kind of smaller informational signs for the parks. Those will be private. They're not going to be public. They won't be run by the park district. So it'll say what it is, and then also be able to tell people it's a private park there. There is a variation needed for the townhome signs. We don't have the exact setbacks that they've shown on the plans for those, but I think it's pretty clear they're going to be closer than 10 feet. There are setback, and they're placed in areas that, from what we can see, won't create any kind of visibility or traffic issues, but we do need to see what those setbacks are, and at least allow still for a couple feet of separation from property lines or the right-of-way. Parking and bike parking, so they again have the variance for the parking on the mixed-use building, since they would need to have 62 parking stalls within that building. It's just a tight space, and they're trying to make it work. To have that many, you'd have to go underground, and that really, or build a separate parking garage. 2 things that just are not economical, and again, from a lot of the studies and the designs we've seen, that seems to be coming up. So we're trying to push it, meet the intent of that as much as possible, but we're seeing a need to basically look at what other options there are out there to meet that. So they have 39, I believe, parking spaces within the building, and then some additional ones in that surface parking lot with the carports then over there. The bike parking portion of this has a requirement for the street level commercial, as well as then the residential to have bike storage, so something we're trying to promote. The commercial bike parking will basically happen within the right-of-way, so our design has multiple places, kind of bike stalls that you can park within the village right-of-way. Within the residential areas, there'll be storage within the parking garage in front of each parking space, And then they'll have a separate storage locker as well for those bikes that'll be parked out in or the cars that'll have to park in the surface lot. They'll have a separate storage locker as well within that parking garage. We do have an open item just to have them also look at EV parking here. We did this with kind of some of our other developments to make sure that at least some of the parking stalls are kind of EV parking ready, so running the conduit. I believe the state actually passed a law essentially requiring this now, starting at the beginning of last year. So it basically, you don't have to put in the EV car charging equipment, but you at least have to run the conduit, make sure you have the capacity within your electrical panels, things like that. I don't even think we have all the details yet. I mean, the law was passed, but there's a lot of interpretation that can happen in that. So it's something just for them, the petitioner, to be aware of going forward. It'll be the hardest thing they'll probably have to think about is the surface parking lot. So if it's a required parking stall, they'd have to potentially run conduit out there. The ones inside of the garage, I think that can be done relatively easy to run conduit within the walls or on the exterior there. And then even within the townhome units, you know, there's attached garages there. So I think they'll be able to make those work. It'll just be about the construction level documents. They'll just have to maybe think a little bit about how they get it out to the surface lots. Lighting, I don't have too much on that. We do need to see the fixture cut sheets and kind of the final photometric plans to be provided. I think the petitioner's got a little bit on that. There is a platification for the village right-of-way and a plat of subdivision that's gonna be proposed. We're always have recommended conditions for final engineering on that. But even from the ones that were in your packet, as of today, I think it's been revised 3 times since that. So I believe what we have will be final, but it's still always gonna be subject to final engineer, final attorney approvals. But we do have a slightly revised one there. It'll be in with the packet for the public hearing. So, that's all I have. I'm gonna stop talking. And
Dan, I just want
The
to.
petitioner's got a proposal.
Sure, and I just want to say,
PowerPoint as
I'm
well.
going to acknowledge that it's almost 9:35, and I know it'll probably be past my bedtime very soon. I believe this is a very important project for Tinley Park. Because of its importance, I don't want to rush through it, feeling like we got to get done before 10. So with that said, I would like to, extend the courtesy to the petitioner to come up to talk, for sure. But I would like to hold commissioner comments and public comments, even though this isn't a public hearing. I do feel that, residents are stakeholders in this project as well, and we want to hear your comments as well. So, I believe it'd be reasonable to, after the petitioner speaking, move this. I saw you had the public hearing up, the 7th of next month, but is it a reasonable ask to extend the workshop to the next plan commission meeting?
You'd have to probably ask them that. I know they're on a little bit of a time frame to be able to there's a lot of kind of design and engineering that needs to go into some of this. You could certainly combine, like, the public hearing, if you guys decided at that it wasn't enough, you could always continue it at that time.
Well, I do have
Plus-
comments, it's just that, if there's enough hours in the day.
Yeah,
And
and
it's-
any of the comments, like I said, can come into staff, so whether it's from the plan commission or them, if you guys have comments, if you have things you wanna see them address, that can still come to us, and we can either pass it along to them to have them consider it. So there is still ways to get feedback or comments or questions, that then they can make sure they have addressed by the public hearing.
Well, let's hear from the petitioner. Sir, if you want to approach the lectern.
Hi, good evening. And I do realize the lateness of the hour. My name is Pat Wojtek. I'm with the law firm of Sossin, Arnold, and Schoenbach. And along with David Sossin of our firm, we've worked very hard. Thank staff for all of their work. The mayor and everyone's been tremendous on this. And thank you for the lateness of the hour and hearing us out tonight. Just really quickly, I'd like to introduce the people who are here and then just turn it over for a little brief presentation. So I have Mr. Bill Schwartz and Ms. Paige Richards from architects from Schwartz Lewis Design. We have our engineer Ben Busman here. our planner Terry Smith, who's going to give the little brief presentation. And on behalf of the developer, we have Pat Curran and Bill Hardy for Tinley Park Main Street and West Point at Harmony Square. One thing I do want to mention to everyone is that with the mid-rise multi-use building, it is 63 units, not 62 units. So I don't know what we need to do to officially make that change,
Okay.
if we need to resubmit.
Yeah, I don't know if I said that, so I keep flipping them.
No, no, I know.
163 and 162.
We messed up, I didn't count right.
Okay.
So it's 63 and 63, so it's 100
The
and,
individual units, it comes to 63, I gave you 62.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you was me.
Okay. Good to know. We can make that change going into the public hearing then.
so
Go ahead,
without
Pat.
further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith to
Sure.
go ahead and give a brief presentation. But we do welcome all your questions and comments on this. We're excited to get started and push along. And so understanding the lateness of the hour, Terry?
Thanks, Pat. Oh, I get so this goes, okay, clicker, that works. Again, my name's Terry Smith. I'm a land planner, landscape architect with BSB Design. I just want to take a minute just to thank Dan Ritter and his staff for all the work and all the effort they put into this up to this point. They've done a lot of work on their part and really a terrific staff report, and it's always great to have a real thorough report so that as we move forward, we know what we need to work on. So again, appreciate that. I won't go too much into the context because Dan did a lot of things, went through a lot of things talking about the site. But just a real important aspect of the site was the abandonment of that segment of 173rd Street. That allowed us a couple of things to reclaim that area for the overall site, to make it more whole, and also to bury the utilities that are both above ground and underground. But that certainly helped kind of bring this whole site more into focus. This shows our site plan, and in laying out the plan, as Dan had described, a very important aspect of the plan was having that mixed-use building located so that it's situated at the east end of Harmony Square. Great urban spaces have great edges, and having that building facing onto the square helps provide that edge along the east side. And it was also important to have not just the building facing the square, but also having the important first floor functions, the retail, the community room and leasing office, having all that face the square as well. Then working north from the mixed-use building, by the way, it's a 5-story building situated behind the retail and the leasing and the community room is the parking garage, all at surface level. Then to the north of that is a kind of a shared parking lot that's primarily for the mixed-use building residents, but also has some use for the townhome folks as well. The townhomes then are positioned for the most part on the old school site on the north end. Again, it was very important as we sited these townhomes to site them so that all the front doors face the public streets. These are rear access buildings, 3-story, the garages that are served by private drive auto courts. And then, whereas on the call it the west side, the buildings face the street. On 67th Court, on 67th Avenue, where you have the ends of the building, you kind of see the arrows. We did make an effort to kind of beef up the ends of those unit elevations by having the side entries. There's a pocket park that's situated sort of in the middle of that townhome pod, and there's another pocket park that's located just to the west of the parking lot that separates the townhomes and the mixed-use building. That will be a dog park for use by the residents. Again, 63 total. It's a little confusing because there's an exact number of both townhomes and apartment units, but 63 each, or a total of 126 units total. This kind of shows how the parking for the townhomes is set up.
Again, each unit will have a two-car garage. Additionally, there are a total of 8 surface spaces, and see in blue, that'll be kind of a sign to that surface parking lot north of the mixed-use building. And in addition, we're not really counting them in the overall calculation, but there are available for residents to park during regular parking hours, 21 on-street spaces that are shown in orange that would be available for residents to park. There's also a little loading zone on 67th Court that's sort of between the townhomes and the mixed-use building that's kind of indicated by that star. As far as the mixed-use building parking is concerned, there's a total of 39 garage spaces that's obviously are in the building, 24 carport spaces, so that there's a total of 1-to-1 that's actually covered. And then additionally, there's 13 of the surface spaces that will also be used, are usable by the residents of the mixed-use building, that bring our ratio up to a total of 1.2 spaces per unit. So just to emphasize, all the parking, does meet the legacy code requirements. I don't believe there's a parking requirement for commercial, but that notwithstanding, if you count all the spaces around the on the 67th Court extension, as well as on the south side of the building, there's a total of 29 surface spaces that are available for commercial and for any type of parking use. We also there was a better shot previously of the carports that are being proposed, and the idea again is to provide some covered parking, but at the same time not having a solid garage structure that, quite frankly, would be much larger and would not really fit the space that we have in that surface parking lot.
Terry, if you don't mind me interrupting you, I'm curious on that carport slide. Where was that picture taken? I know it's just as an example. I'm just curious, in your experience, the ruggedness of those carports to hold up in
Well, it's
Midwest
interesting.
weather.
One of the companies that makes these is actually out of Michigan. If you
Okay.
go on their website, it's actually, they have a winter climate that they're showing. I could probably get you the image. But for the most, you're right, one thing, the carports primarily are used in the west and
Yeah.
southwest, but
Texas.
there are, they do have some application, in our climate.
My concern would be more so like the snow. You got the snow loads, and then over time the freeze
It's all-
thaw,
it's
and
all
so it starts to
designed
look
in, yeah.
dilapidated pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then the maintenance on this. So that is kind of my concern on that. But that's why I was asking where that one was taken.
Sure, sure. So this kind of shows our amenities that we have on the site. In orange, we have the pocket park that's in the townhome area. In the dark blue, there's a dog park that's situated between the townhomes and the mixed-use building. And as far as the mixed-use building itself, we have kind of a surface level patio that's situated on the north side of the building off the community room. And then, one of the advantages of having this step-back building where we extend the commercial out on both the front side and the back, the podium of the garage that extends out on the backside, that affords us the opportunity of having kind of the second floor patio space for the residents. So in front, we have a kind of a smallish 750 square foot patio that'll overlook the square. And then in back, you'll see the kind of that triangular shaped space is a larger, quieter space that'll feature more of the traditional elements of an apartment amenity space, like barbecue, television, fire pit, soft seating. And there was a question or a comment made about how the separation of the resident units from the public patio space, how that'll be achieved. You kind of see we got a little imagery shot of some raised planters. Those will be used as kind of separation elements between the unit balconies and the patio space. So they're not totally walled up, but just to provide enough implied separation between what's private and what's public. And it also affords the opportunity of providing some landscape plantings on that patio deck space. Both Bill and Paige are here from Schwartz Lewis. After, maybe during the question and answers, can go into more detail about the architecture, but this, you've seen this image before. This is a rendering of the front of the building. You kind of see how how the step back first floor works, and you see the entry in the middle of the building. Just to the left, on the north end of the building, will be the community room and leasing office, and then to the right will be the retail. And the objective here is to kind of have that retail glassy frontage, all facing the plaza and the streetscape to kind of give this building a more urban look. This shows kind of a rough spatial distribution of the first floor. You kind of see in yellow is the garage, the red is the retail, the orange is the community room and leasing, and kind of bluish gray are the back of house functions, the trash, the bike storage.
Terry, quick question on that 67th Court exit. I think it came up during the presentation. It does appear it's like one way from the north to the south.
It's going northwest, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. So it's going northwest. So it's from south to north, rather. Why was the design strictly one way?
Because that gave us the opportunity of providing parking spaces on the opposite side without encroaching into the Harmony Square Plaza.
And I'll say, a lot of this design in the works is gonna not be their decision, so right now, they're kind of going through those final design phases. So there may not be parking on both sides, and it may not be this exact layout, so.
Fair enough. I was just curious, functionality-wise, if you can only go one way, I think it'd probably be a little bit more augmented if you could go both. I know it becomes a space constraint. I couldn't see what the dimensions in the yellow for that 2 lanes on that first floor parking, but I'm wondering if that can be moved. If that's 30 feet, then that's 15 and 15, but I can't read that dimension. But if things can be shifted so you can get a little bit of, I think it'd be a better design to have a 2-way if there's something specifically one way for one reason. Is it just because one way is better than no way?
Yeah, I'll let Dana talk. I was gonna say there's been a
Sure.
lot of.
If it's all right, I'll weigh in.
Yeah, weigh in, please. Yeah, absolutely, Dana.
Our team has also been working on this project as well. There was a little bit of a concern in regard to that 3-legged intersection, because they're not very typical. And so when you're thinking about the different vehicles coming and trying to turn different directions, we felt it would be safer to actually remove one of those options in doing that as well. So a lot of different considerations, and that would be one that comes from our team too.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I wasn't sure, like, if you want to funnel it towards the train station. Here it's funneled away, so, okay. At least that's all I wanted to know was the why. So I appreciate that, Dana. Thank you. Terry, sorry for interrupting.
That's
Please
okay.
continue.
So 4,300 and change of square feet of commercial, about 3,500 community room, leasing space, 3,500 square feet, and again, 39 total parking spaces in the garage. And this show you just some flat elevations of both the southwest and southeast facades that I think you saw earlier. Again, 63 units total. Studios, 5 studios, 29 ones, 27 twos, and 2 3-bedroom units. Square footages are indicated. Again, the 700 square foot size of the studio was actually a revision from a previous plan that we had where the studios were actually under 700 square feet, so we made them larger to be over that 700 square foot threshold. And just so you know, we did We did talk to our marketing consultant, Lance Ramello, and asked him, typically, what's the average size of a suburban infill studio unit? And I think he said, what, Pat?
631.
Yeah, 631 square feet. So this is about 10% larger than that.
And then Terry, I'm just curious, is that 705, since there's 5 of them, is like every floor, it just is mirrored, right?
Each. Yeah, it's the same unit.
It's the same unit
They
on
vary-
each
there-
floor?
There's a little variation when you get to the top floor, it shifts over one because we went to a 3-bedroom unit.
Okay.
And
Fair-
then there's one that goes on out by the amenity deck.
Fair enough. That makes sense because you're just fitting it in that corner. The other question I had was 8 units don't have balconies. So what 8 units, lost that lottery, so to speak? And just looking at this facade, you may not know offhand, but is it cheating towards North Avenue? Is it cheating towards,
Well, there's the studio units, there's 4 of them that could work their way up along North Street.
Yeah.
Typically, we don't do balconies on the studios because they're usually the smallest units.
Yeah.
The other 3
Three.
are on the backside over the amenity deck.
Okay.
They can be added, but once again, we made those units a little bigger, they're 1-bedroom office. So they're like a 1-bedroom den. So we didn't do the balcony there because it would have to be fully cantilevered and supported back, whereas all the other ones are recessed.
Makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You just show the other elevations on the other 2 building sides. And this gives you just an idea of what the footprint plan for the second and third and fourth floors. You kind of see on the second floor how you see there's a little walkway that allows people to access call it the quiet side roof deck on the east side. And there will be an access on the opposite side to access the terrace on the building's west side. So I think there's nominally 16 units per floor in the building, with the exception being the uppermost floor where we combine a couple units to make the larger 3-bedroom unit. So this is just electronically, we have live samples here, but there's four different color packages that kind of tie into both. I think you're using representative materials on the mixed-use building, but EFS, a little bit of EFS accent, primarily brick, masonry, cementitious hardy siding, as well as stone trim. And then these 4 color packages are also tied into the townhome elevations and we got a plan that kind of shows how we've arranged the usage of different materials on the building assemblies for the townhomes to provide some variety in the streetscape.
So Terry, so those 4 are possibilities, right? They're not all possibilities, right? Like those,
There are 4 we're using.
okay.
There are 4 for the townhouses, and basically for the mixed use, number 1 was what the colors, the brick we were using, and the color of the hardy.
Okay. Will you be able to pass that around, Lori, at all? Or somebody, or Jason? Just to see it, I mean, that is superior than the computer. I mean, it's a team effort here.
These things are really hard to make too, by the way.
On the townhouses, we kept the shingles all the same.
Because I carry them all here.
They look good.
Shingle side up, right?
Yeah,
You got it right.
they do look good. Okay, thanks to staff, and apologies again, Terry.
No problem,
You can continue.
This slide just kind of keys out the different materials on the mixed-use building. It also shows the floor heights, and the other thing I wanted to point out is that on the first floor, we've got a 13-foot floor-to-ceiling height. And I think there was a suggestion made, why can't the community room and leasing, why can't that be on the second floor? When you go in these like a quality rental community, you want that club space to have that tall ceiling, especially if you have a fitness function. If you ever gone on treadmill or stair climber on a 9-foot ceiling. It's just not, it's just not a great sensation there. So, it's having that extra volume in the club space is really important. This shows one style of townhome design, and again, to emphasize the use of, on the on those side elevations that face 67th Avenue, you can kind of see that little porch entry off to the side. This is a kind of a new, kind of off-the-press elevation design that kind of clarifies that alternative elevation style. Townhome floor plans, again, 15 to 1,800 square feet, 2-car garages. The outdoor patio space is actually situated in front of the units and not in back.
Okay.
And this is what what I was just kind of alluded to previously about the kind of the anti-monotony plan, where each color is kind of tied into the different, the use of the different material packages. And I can kind of see how the colors something happened with the colors, but anyway.
Difficult to do.
Yes, it is. So just in closing, one of the things I just wanted to emphasize is that this whole process has really been, it's been a great one. It's very iterative between us and village staff. I think it was Dan's suggestion to come up with the arrangement of the townhomes, or suggested to face them to public streets, and he had some other great suggestions as well. But we've worked very hard of making additional changes to the plan based on staff comments, adding additional parking for the townhomes. We've added the carports to provide covered parking for mixed-use building residents. We've added the surface parking along 67 Court that we just talked about previously. As far as the building design is concerned, we have tried, it's funny, it's just trying to add, it's so tight with where that mixed-use building is located. That site is, everything that's going into that building, the parking garage, the retail uses, the community room, the units, everything, it all wants to be square. It all wants to be in a square box or a rectangular box, and that site really isn't square. So that's provided really quite a challenge. So we tried to squeeze every foot out of that space to give us a generous sidewalk in front of the building, and give us enough room for parking, and give us, we actually, I think we started with like a 40 or 35-foot retail depth, and we brought it up to what it is now. So we worked very hard to make that retail as deep as we could. We've added some elements to the second floor patio decks, enhancement of the North Street building facade that we'll show you a little bit. We saw the kind of before and after of that. We talked about how we increased the studio unit area and worked hard to kind of create this coordination of materials on the townhome units. And then, again, this is just a repeat of the slide I think you saw previously. This is one of the versions that we started with, as far as that North Street facade on top, and then on the bottom is kind of where we're at now, and it's really quite an improvement from where we started originally. This kind of shows, just how much we've added. It doesn't seem like a lot, but we've kind of flipped around some of the community room spaces on the first floor to increase the amount of commercial that we're proposing. I think we're at 2,800 or 2,900 square feet on the left to where we're at now, which is about 4,300 square feet. We probably not much to talk about. Signage and landscaping. We worked really hard to develop both, and I'm sure there's going to be some tweaking of the landscape plan as we as we adjust the plan moving forward. There is a question, I don't know if you can read it, like how much area is there for the outdoor dining? It looks like there's, I think I measured, there's about 40 feet or so from the building face to the curb. From the building to the right-of-way line is about 8 or 9 feet. So it's not a lot of space, but I still think if you look and study at a lot of kind of, streetscape situations and downtowns, they're not really big areas anyway. So there is enough area, I think, to put some tables and chairs out there for some limited outdoor dining. So to that end, I understand that the hour is late, but if you have any quick questions you want to throw at us, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
Absolutely, Terry. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the team members jumping in to answer questions while you were doing it. Yeah, we'll just start with Commissioner Hamilton. Any questions or comments for the team?
Very excited to see it. Looks great. Can't wait to see the shovels go in the ground.
Excellent. Commissioner Truxell.
Yeah, it also looks good. I think there might be one concern with the shared garbage space with residential and commercial. That's the only concern I have at this point.
Okay. And that hasn't been fleshed out at this stage of the, okay. But I know we did spend a lot of time on the garbage for the boulevard, so I think that would be something, once it gets more, formed up, or firmed up, to take a look at.
Specifically, you don't want a restaurant walking their garbage down the sidewalk to get to the garbage dumpster. I don't know how that's gonna work, but that's what I don't wanna see.
Right.
A trail of grease going down the sidewalk or whatever, That's the concern.
I concur on that. Any other comments?
We'll have them come up with, maybe they could come up with a little more of a written plan of how it's gonna operate, so then you guys can feel confident they have a plan, that's something we can hold them to if there's ever an
Of course, it doesn't have to be
issue.
a restaurant, it could be something else.
Right,
If
but-
it is a restaurant, that's a concern.
Yep.
And I know you
We'll
took.
just have them think through it a little bit
Right,
more.
you took pains to make that retail or restaurant space, commercial space, bigger, perhaps maybe that very north end is something for your dumpster, and then you can just wheel it out into the 167th extension or something, so it can get picked up. I don't know, I don't propose to say I have the solution for that, but Commissioner Merrick, any comment?
As a former restaurateur, you would then, if you're thinking about that as a potential restaurant space, you'd have to build hoods and all that other stuff in there too, right? Which is quite an undertaking to really think about. I want to ponder this a little bit more. I like it in conceptually. I'm thinking a lot about like this, if the square is right there in front and people will want to be in a space where they're able to see live music and other things, but yet the major outdoor area faces towards the back, that, which seems inescapable given the shape, dimension, and space that you have to work with. Anyways, so, there's a lot of cool things here, but
Yeah.
some interesting things to think about. And I'm also thinking about like who owns the Metro lots, given the very huge change in parking usage and Metro usage without being able to predict the future of Metro usage. Even though this would likely attract Metro users, right?
Yeah, totally.
Thinking about if the village owns that, is there a way that they can permit people who live there to park in that space overnight, right? And they have a particular thing, and then they don't get ticketed or whatever. The village gets more revenue, you have less concern about all these tight parking spaces up against the building. And I keep thinking about that on-street parking. Like, when there's busy stuff down there, there's not gonna be residential on-street parking, it'll be everybody's street parking,
Correct.
right? So, how do we use the Metro lot in a way, I don't know if we can, right? So-
You're jumping ahead, and I wish Jarrell had a microphone, because he's the one kind of working on it, but we're already kind of headed that direction. So particularly with the way Metro, the two stations have worked out, if you're a regular commuter, you're gonna be going to 80th Avenue. that goes express into the city
Yeah.
at certain times where Oak Park, it skips over Oak Park Avenue there. So actually, the Oak Park Avenue ridership numbers have dipped considerably, and we're still stuck pre-COVID where it's all monthly passes, and those haven't sold. So we're going to hopefully be switching. We're bringing some stuff to the board to go with like electronic pay stations, which are pretty common across even the suburbs now. And that'll allow for options like daily pay. It'll allow options for residents to maybe pick an area where residents down there, if they don't have the parking spaces they need an extra one, they rent it from the village
Yeah.
in one of those. Or other public parking lots even within the downtown. So I know that's pretty common. Downers Grove, which I was going to live in for a short period, you would do the same thing. You could rent like the 4th floor of their parking garage, and you can just pay monthly, every 6 months, annually, whatever you wanted. So those electronic pay stations and kind of the program that goes with that will open up significantly more possibilities for different parking options that are downtown.
Yeah,
So
and I guess.
you're jumping ahead,
Oh,
but
good,
we're working
good.
on it.
I mean, that's
so.
the kind of stuff I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Is who's bringing their car there? Who needs to leave it there? Do we need to create more parking if parking's there and it's unused, right? That sort of
There's
stuff.
opportunities for like a future collaboration that
Yeah.
benefits everybody, right? So.
And there is some limits. It's actually owned by Metra, most of the lots, and they do have requirements for certain numbers to be kept as commuter spots. But there's flexibility in there in the numbers we have and stuff. So, they obviously wanna make sure there's parking for people to use the Metro station. But we can even work with them, and again, we have some flexibility, so.
Yeah, and I guess
Look at
the
that.
other thing I was thinking about too, looking at that and staying brief, is I don't know if the developers are buying the land or we're seeding the old land or whatever, but if we are, I wonder about that park being like private. I understand why one might think about that, but it's a really public, open space, and some other planned areas make use of those public-private things to open up more space, green space, and other things, right? So I understand why you'd want the dog park to be closed off and
Right.
people to, you'd know who's using it and that sort of stuff. But at other green space, I don't see why that would need to be private. So,
Okay, thanks for your comments. I want to say, I thought the same thing, like that Primo space overlooking Harmony Square, how cool will that be if you're the one who gets it reserved for that weekend, they have a big shindig. Ideally, it'd be great to have the bigger one, however, we understand the constraints of the geometry of the property. Either way, it's a very exciting project. It's gonna be very cool. Commissioner Sepisi?
I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, okay. The only, I kind of interjected when you were presenting, Terry. I was just trying to get it out there for the sake of time while it was on my mind. The patios, I know that came up. When I read the staff report, I think there was no indication of patio space, but I like the slide you showed where I think it had like 7, the tables and stuff. I do think it is an important thing to have. It is gonna be very street level, a lot of walk up, even smaller restaurants, or the Scoop has a couple seats and chairs out there. And when it was fully functional and occupied along Oak Park Avenue, the original Durbin's there, you had a lot of people just come out just to sit out and have a beer and enjoy. And here it's gonna be even more of an attraction because of what Harmony Square is gonna bring on a very routine basis. So I like that fact that you did have that in your slide, and I know you're limited on space with that too. But, 7 or so, that's at least an attempt, and I think they will be used. I don't think it'd be something that people will ignore. I think that it's a good attraction. Let me see my notes if I have.
There is an option there for that patio space, like if a restaurant goes in there, the way it's designed, you could have like overhead doors or something.
Okay.
So there's a lot, I think of like Milk Money and LaGrange, and they have like a pretty small patio outside, but when you open up garage doors, then it almost makes a feeling
Right.
like a full restaurant.
Is that something on your design, the design team's radar? Like, and I know,
I think it'd be specific to the tenant.
Yeah,
depending on when they get it,
right.
so I don't think they've done it yet.
Right.
But you can always build that into there if that's what that tenant.
but
wants.
honestly,
You
that,
could also eliminate some of the parking stalls at that corner. You got parallel parking, we could get rid
Oh,
of
that's
two
true,
of them, and
that's true.
create a bigger patio there.
that's true.
And out in front where the diagonal parking is, we could eliminate some of the first parking spaces so that we get a bigger sidewalk area.
I mean, that may be something to consider, because I know the idea is to get it denser and there'd be more walking. And as Commissioner Merrick said, if there's able to be some sort of future collaboration with the Metro spots, then I think the amenity of having a bigger patio, who knows, whoever that moves in as a tenant, if they have one of those that opens up, as well, I mean, I think it would be even just, even more nice. But I think there's probably some wiggle room. I mean, I think you guys are like, slide into home, it looks pretty good, right? So, you know, let's make sure we tag home plate and get that run in. But, sorry for the sports analogy, but it's a pretty good project. Any other comments from commissioners? I know you guys all spoke, but, just checking my notes one more time here. Yeah, I mentioned the carports and the weather, just how that would hold up. I would like to know, just because of a standpoint of just, you don't want something to deteriorate quicker in the Midwest, even if they were, you know, manufactured in Michigan, that is a feather in the cap. And then I just want to reiterate something, and I know it's probably tenant dependent, but I agree with Commissioner Truxell. You would want to make sure you have some sort of way to get garbage out of that tenant, especially if it's a restaurant. So, you know, keep options open. But other than that, I really am excited about this project. I appreciate you guys did a lot of work. I can see this be like such a big attraction, not just people who want to live, but, you know, have fun in Tinley Park as well. So, thank you for your time today. I'm going to ask if there's anybody from the public wishing to speak. This is a workshop, it's not a public hearing, so but I just wanted to open that up.
With the discussion about space and patios and such, I don't think that dog park thing is a good idea with Oak Park Avenue. It's just a suggestion,
I will say this, like, people that are probably on the 5th story there, they're gonna wanna get someplace quick with the dog park.
I don't think dogs belong in condos, but that's,
Yeah.
I'm a dog owner, so.
Fair-
40% of our renters have them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we have to accommodate them.
It kind of went from no dogs, pets were allowed, to now they encourage it because everybody has them.
Yeah.
And I think they I don't know if you guys are used to, I mean, you usually have size limit, so it usually is
Yes.
smaller dogs, right?
And they're more
Absolutely.
annoying.
I mean, I got a shepherd in the lab, so, yeah. But I think it's, at least if you're in those units, that's what you want. You have your apartment, you maybe have a smaller dog, and that's just at least somewhere for them to enjoy to go outside. I think that's better than if you had animals and you didn't have that. Then you'd have some big issues with probably the village right-of-way getting issues with neighboring properties, so at least that gives that option.
boy.
I think the alternative to not having that would be like not allowing animals, but I think, again, that 40% seems pretty.
Yeah, too big a segment to.
Right. Yeah.
And I know, I mean, Boulevard's done well renting. I don't think they allow animals right now. They were going to with phase 2, where they had kind of more of a dog strip on the side of that one too, or an animal run. So I don't think they allow them with phase 1, but they were gonna allow it once phase 2 happens, so hopefully.
Get a house.
Well, fair enough. Is there any other comments from the public? If not, I'm going to turn to staff. I know there was a lot of open items, and we probably would speak longer if it wasn't so late in the night. With that said, do you have enough for your
Yep.
staff? And then,
I think we got some good direction. They've already even worked on some of those open items, as you guys saw. So, we'll keep working with them. We even have an extra week here
Yeah.
with the month, so we'll keep working with them, and I think we'll get those resolved here.
I do want to say too, like, I did enjoy, I thought adding those windows that are effectively faux windows, it does open that up. It looks nice, even though we know it's masking parked cars, right? It looks improved that way from the street side, so.
And there was a lot of back and forth on that. We were trying to figure out the best option. We didn't want it to look goofy, fake, like
Right.
you could have something that just, you're standing next to it and you go, it might be
Right.
better that just wasn't there. So we're still working with them. I think the details as we go along will matter on that, exactly how it looks in real life. And yeah, I think we've gotten to a good point here, but we'll keep working with them. Make sure it doesn't look odd, because there's gonna be a lot of people right next to it.
Excellent.
So.
Yeah, I just want to thank the team again to come out in full force, and come fully armed with a presentation, with samples we can see. That's always superior to just printouts. So thank you again for your time and going into the wee hours here. With that said, we will move on to the good of the order. Staff, do you have anything for the good of the
I
order?
got two quick things. Commissioner Bettenhausen has stepped down. He's gonna be leaving Tinley Park, so we're sad to see him go, but appreciate his years. He wasn't on Plan Commission very long here, but he was on ZBA before that and has volunteered quite a bit for the village, so we appreciate him. He was gonna come today if he needed to come, but also a little awkward when he's leaving to be reviewing the stuff coming in, so again, just appreciate him for his service. There will be a new commissioner appointed at the next board meeting.
Sure.
It's anticipated to be, Kayla West, who's been on the
Yeah.
commission before, so, she goes to the board for an appointment at the next board meeting.
Excellent.
I think that's all. The fence variation in the Oak Park Towns development, those got approved at the village board on Tuesday, so, those should be going forward as well, so. Let me
Okay.
know, if you guys have anything else, feel free to email me.
Fair enough.
I'd be glad to help. Or call me.
All right, with that, I'll move on to receiving comments from the public. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak right now?
I would like to ask a question about Whitewater Street when you're talking about the gas city.
Sure.
I mean, the gas.
White Eagle, yeah.
Yeah, Whitey.
Is that end in a dead end?
Yeah, so the ends at a dead end, basically at I-80 going south.
Oh, okay. So there's no way to like widen that and wrap it around to LaGrange at all? For the trucks?
No, I mean, it basically, that's the ramp right there, the on-ramp for
literally.
LaGrange is literally wraps that whole corner.
Okay.
So it's, that's the on-ramp for I-80, so I'm
Okay.
not an engineer and I'm not Dana, but they won't even allow a right-in, right-out from that onto LaGrange, let alone any type of full access, would not be able to work there, so.
Because I was under the impression from the lady that spoke that it was about the truck traffic more than anything going on to 183rd.
Yeah, and I think it's making the right there, so
Correct.
it's making sure they don't make a right down that, because it isn't a no truck designated route, there are signs out there. So sometimes signs can just help discourage what you don't want, but I think that's the main concern, making sure they don't jump between those two. And we're aware of that, there's a way station between them too, so it actually, that plays into it.
Oh.
So, we're aware of it, and that's why we have the signage, and we'll look and make sure this doesn't negatively affect that. It's worked so well to this point, we'll make sure this doesn't really cause any problems.
Yeah, I can see how, I mean, I don't live over there, but you can see how that would be annoying if trucks all of a sudden came down there.
Okay. With that, I'm going to go to adjourn meeting. May I have a motion to close the meeting?
So we move.
Seconded. So, motion made by Commissioner Truxell. I think Commissioner Sepisi said the second. Okay, he nodded in acknowledgement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. This meeting is adjourned at 10:20 PM Central Time. Get some sleep, everybody.
It's been a while since we've